1 month after my best friend Marcus died from a sudden heart attack, his lawyer called me into his office and locked the door. He didn't offer me water. He didn't offer me condolences. He simply slid a heavy sealed envelope in a crimson-red USB drive across his mahogany desk. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Isaiah, your friend left you this drive with strict instructions. He told me that if he died in his sleep from old age, I was to throw this in the trash incinerator. But if he died from a heart attack like the coroner said he did, I was to give this to you immediately. He told me to tell you to watch it alone, and under no circumstances are you to tell your wife about this meeting." What he warned me about in that final video didn't just break my heart, it saved my life and exposed a killer sleeping right next to me. My name is Isaiah Turner, but everyone in Atlanta calls me Ike. I am 71 years old. I have spent my entire life building things. I started as a bricklayer and built a construction empire from the dirt up. I thought I knew how to spot a weak foundation. I thought I knew how to inspect a structure for rot. But as I sat in that leather chair staring at that red piece of plastic, I realized I had been inspecting the wrong things. I had been looking at concrete and steel while the termites were eating away at my own life. Before I tell you what was on that drive, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. It helps more people hear this warning. Now let me tell you about the day my life turned into a crime scene. The law office of Steinberg and Associates smelled like old paper and lemon polish. It was cold. Steinberg was a man of few words, which is why Marcus and I liked him. He didn't bill you for small talk. When he handed me that drive, his hand was shaking just a little bit. That scared me more than anything. Steinberg had been our lawyer for 30 years. He had seen us through lawsuits, union strikes, and tax audits without blinking. But today he looked pale. He said, "Ike, legally, I cannot know what is on that drive." Marcus was very specific. He invoked attorney-client privilege to seal this until the condition of his death was met. But I knew Marcus. He wasn't a man for drama. If he went to the trouble of setting this up, you need to watch it. Today. I took the drive. It felt warm in my hand, like it was burning a hole in my palm. I asked Steinberg if he had told anyone else about this. He shook his head. He said, "Not even my secretary knows you are here, Ike. Go home, watch it, and be careful." The drive back to my house in Buckhead felt like a blur. I was driving my old Ford pickup, the one my daughter Keisha always begged me to sell. She said it didn't fit the image of a retired CEO. But I liked the rumble of the engine. It was honest. Unlike everything else in my life, apparently. When I pulled into the driveway, I looked at my house. It was a sprawling two-story estate with white pillars and a manicured lawn. Loretta, my wife of 40 years, loved this house. She spent her days tending to the rose garden and hosting charity luncheons. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple. The successful contractor and his elegant, supportive wife. We had the money, the respect, the golden years ahead of us. But as I turned off the ignition, a chill ran down my spine. Marcus had died 3 days after his 70th birthday. He was healthy as a horse. We played golf every Tuesday. He walked 5 miles every morning. Then boom, massive cardiac arrest. His wife Linda had been devastated, crying at the funeral, leaning on Loretta for support. It was a tragic end to a good life. Or so I thought. I didn't go into the main house. I went straight to the detached garage. This was my sanctuary. It was where I kept my tools, my old drafting table, and a small television setup where I watched football on Sundays to escape Loretta's nagging. I locked the side door. I pulled the blinds down. I felt foolish, like a spy in a bad movie. But Steinberg's voice kept echoing in my head. "Under no circumstances tell your wife." I plugged the red USB drive into my laptop. My hands were trembling. These were the hands that had poured cement and framed houses. They were scarred and tough, but right now they shook like a leaf. A file popped up. It was just named The Truth. I clicked play. The screen flickered for a second, and then Marcus appeared. He was sitting in his study, the one with the dark wood paneling. But he didn't look like the Marcus I knew. He looked terrible. His skin was gray. His eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark circles. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He was whispering constantly, looking over his shoulder at the door. He said, "Ike, if you are watching this, it means I am gone. And it means the doctors said it was my heart." He took a shaky breath on the video. He leaned closer to the camera lens. He said, "Listen to me closely, brother. My heart is fine. Or it was. until Linda started making me the special smoothies, until she started organizing my pillbox. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Linda Marcus's wife. They had been married almost as long as Loretta and I. Marcus continued. He said, I found out 2 days ago. I came home early from the club. I heard Linda on the phone. She was talking to someone. She was laughing Ike. She was laughing about how long it was taking. She said the dosage is correct, it just needs time to build up. We don't want an autopsy to look suspicious. On the screen, tears were streaming down Marcus's face. He wiped them away angrily. He said, I didn't know who she was talking to at first. I hid in the hallway. I listened. And then she said the name. She said, don't worry, Loretta. I will make sure mine is done before you start on Ike. We can combine the life insurance policies and buy that condo in Miami by Christmas. I froze. The air left the garage. I couldn't breathe. I replayed that part. She said, don't worry, Loretta. I will make sure mine is done before you start on Ike. My Loretta. My wife. The woman who rubbed my back when it was sore. The woman who cooked my meals. The woman who was currently inside the house, probably watching a cooking show. Marcus was sobbing now on the video. He said, Ike, I went to a private lab yesterday. I took a sample of the heart medication Linda gives me every morning. It's not heart medicine, Ike. It's digoxin. But in a lethal, slow-building dose. It mimics a heart attack. If they don't look for it specifically, they won't find it. They will just see an old black man with a bad ticker. He held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a lab report. He said, I am going to the police tomorrow. But if something happens to me tonight, if she gives me something tonight, this is your warning. Do not eat anything she gives you. Do not take the pills she gives you. Check your medicine bottles. They are swapping the contents. They are killing us, Ike. They are killing us for the money. The video cut to black. I sat there in the silence of my garage staring at my own reflection in the black screen of the laptop. I felt sick. Physically sick. I wanted to vomit. It had to be a mistake. Marcus was paranoid. He was sick. Loretta loved me. We had just celebrated our anniversary. She gave me a gold watch. You don't give a gold watch to a man you are planning to murder. But then I thought about the last 6 months. The fatigue. The way my hands had started shaking. The way I would get dizzy standing up. Loretta had insisted I go to the doctor. She had gone with me into the examination room. She had answered all the questions for me. She told the doctor I was getting forgetful. She told him I was confused. The doctor had prescribed me a new medication, a blue pill, for blood pressure, he said, to prevent strokes. Loretta kept the pills in the kitchen cabinet. She sorted them into a plastic organizer for me every Sunday night. She was so diligent, so caring. I looked at my hand. It was still trembling. Was it fear, or was it the poison? Suddenly the doorknob of the garage rattled. I slammed the laptop shut. I shoved the red USB drive into my pocket just as the door creaked open. Loretta stood there. The afternoon sunlight framed her like a halo. She was wearing her floral apron, the one with the sunflowers. She had a tray in her hands. On the tray was a glass of warm milk and a small paper cup. Inside the paper cup was a single blue pill. She smiled. It was the same smile she had given me for 40 years. Warm, comforting, the smile of a mother, the smile of a wife. She said, there you are, honey. I was looking all over for you. You missed your afternoon dose. You know what Dr. Evans said. Consistency is key to keeping that big heart of yours beating. She walked towards me. Her steps were soft. She said, are you okay, Ike? You look like you've seen a ghost. You're sweating. I tried to control my breathing. I looked at the blue pill. An hour ago it was just medicine. Now it looked like a bullet caliber .45 pointed straight at my chest. I forced a smile. It felt like cracking dried clay. I said, I'm fine, Loretta. Just fixing a loose leg on the workbench. It's hot in here. She set the tray down on my drafting table right next to where I had hidden the laptop. She picked up the pill and the milk. She held them out to me. Her eyes were locked on mine. They weren't warm anymore. They were searching. They were calculating. She said, drink up, sweetheart. I made the milk warm just how you like it. I want to make sure you are around for a long, long time. But the way she said it didn't sound like a wish. It sounded like a timeline. I reached out and took the pill. It felt heavy. She stood there waiting. She wasn't leaving. Usually she would drop it off and go back to her gardening. But today she stood there, hands clasped in front of her apron, watching. She said, go on, Ike. Swallow it. I want to see you take it. You've been forgetting lately and we can't have that. My heart hammered against my ribs. If I didn't take it, she would know I knew. If I did take it, I was one step closer to ending up like Marcus. I looked at the pill. I looked at my wife. And for the first time in 40 years, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a stranger who had been sleeping in my bed, raising my children and planning my funeral. I lifted the glass to my lips. The blue pill sat in the center of my palm, small and innocent looking. It was the same shade of blue as the sky on a perfect summer day, or the paint on the nursery walls of my first house. For 6 months I had swallowed this pill every single afternoon without a second thought. I trusted the label, I trusted the doctor, and most of all I trusted the woman standing 3 feet away from me. But now staring at it, I didn't see medicine. I saw a bullet, a slow-moving chemical bullet designed to hollow me out from the inside. Loretta was watching me. Her eyes were fixed on my hand. She had that same sweet, patient smile plastered on her face, but there was a hardness behind it that I had never noticed before. It was the look of a hawk waiting for a field mouse to make a mistake. "Go on, honey," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sugar. "The milk is getting cold. You know how the doctor said it works best with warm milk. It helps the absorption." Absorption. That word made my stomach turn. She wasn't talking about healing. She was talking about poisoning. I lifted the pill to my mouth. My hand was shaking, and for the first time I didn't try to hide the tremor. Let her see it. Let her think the poison was working. Let her think I was just a frail, broken old man who couldn't even hold a pill steady. I placed the pill on my tongue. It tasted bitter like copper and ash. I took a sip of the warm milk. It was thick and creamy, coating my throat. I held the liquid in my mouth. I didn't swallow. Suddenly I doubled over. I let out a harsh, hacking cough, the kind of cough that rattles your ribs. It wasn't hard to fake. The fear was already constricting my chest so tight I could barely breathe. "Oh my God!" Loretta took a step forward, but she didn't reach out to pat my back. She didn't reach for a glass of water. She just watched. I grabbed the heavy cloth napkin from the tray and pressed it to my mouth, coughing violently into the fabric. As I did, I spit the blue pill and the mouthful of milk into the folds of the napkin. I wiped my mouth aggressively, folding the napkin over in my hand to hide the evidence. I took a deep, wheezing breath, straightening up. I forced myself to swallow air, making my Adam's apple bob so she would see the motion. Went down the wrong pipe. I rasped my voice, sounding weak and gravelly. Loretta didn't move immediately. Her eyes scanned my face. She looked at my mouth. She looked at the empty cup. Then she looked at my throat. She was checking to make sure the payload had been delivered. "Did you get it down?" she asked. Her tone wasn't worried. It was procedural, like a foreman checking a punch list. I nodded, patting my chest. Yeah, it's down. Just needed a minute." She relaxed. Her shoulders dropped an inch. The hawk had seen the mouse die, or so she thought. "Good," she said, picking up the tray. "You rest now, Ike. You've been looking so tired lately. Maybe take a nap before dinner. Bradley is coming over later to discuss those investments, and you know how sharp he likes you to be." She turned and walked out of the garage, the screen door slamming shut behind her. I waited 10 seconds, then 20. Then I rushed to the door and locked it. My legs finally gave out, and I slumped against the workbench. I opened the soggy napkin. There it was, the blue pill. It had started to dissolve slightly in the milk, the blue coating bleeding onto the white cloth like a stain. I stared at it, and suddenly the last 6 months of my life flashed before my eyes like a horror movie reel. I remembered the day on the job site back in November. I was supervising a renovation for a client. I tried to sign a check for the lumber delivery, but I couldn't remember my own signature. The pen just hovered over the paper. My hand was trembling so bad I dropped the pen. The young foreman had looked at me with pity. He said, "Don't worry, Mr. Turner, we can handle it. Go sit in the truck." I felt so ashamed that day. I thought my mind was going. I thought it was dementia. I remembered the night I got lost driving home from the grocery store. I have lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I know every pothole, every street sign, but that night the streets looked alien. The lights blurred into streaks. I had to pull over and call Loretta. She came and got me. She didn't yell. She just shook her head and said, "Oh, Ike, it's getting worse, isn't it?" I believed her. God help me, I believed her. I thought my brain was rotting. I thought I was becoming a burden. I even thanked her for taking care of me. I looked down at the blue pill in my hand. It wasn't dementia. It wasn't old age. It was this. Every single day she was feeding me madness. She was stealing my mind piece by piece so she could steal my life. A surge of rage hot enough to melt steel roared through my veins. It burned away the fear. It burned away the confusion. I grabbed a small plastic sample bag from my tool drawer, the kind I used to keep screws in. I dropped the soggy pill inside and sealed it. I grabbed my keys. I needed to know exactly what this was, and I knew exactly who to ask. I slipped out the side door of the garage, avoiding the kitchen window where Loretta was likely watching. I climbed into my truck and peeled out of the driveway. I drove across town to an industrial park near the airport. It was a gritty area full of warehouses and chemical supply shops. I pulled up to a small, nondescript brick building with a sign that read Miller Chemical Analysis. Doc Miller was a guy I had known since Vietnam. He wasn't a medical doctor. He was a chemist who used to test concrete samples and soil toxicity for my construction projects. He was a genius with a spectroscope and a man who owed me his life after I pulled him out of a collapsed trench in 1978. I banged on the metal door. Miller opened it, squinting against the sunlight. He was a thin, wiry man with wild gray hair and chemical burns on his apron. "Ike," he said, surprised. "I thought you were retired. What are you doing in this part of town? I didn't have time for pleasantries." I pushed past him into the lab. It smelled of ozone and sulfur. "I need a favor, Doc, and I need it now." I pulled the plastic bag out of my pocket and slapped it onto his stainless steel table. "I need to know what this is." Miller looked at the dissolving blue pill. He looked at my face. He saw the sweat, the fear, the anger. He didn't ask any questions. He just nodded and grabbed a pair of tweezers. "Give me 20 minutes, he said. Those 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I paced the small lab, listening to the hum of the centrifuge and the clicking of the computer keys. I kept checking my phone. 3 missed calls from Loretta, 1 text message. "Where did you go?" "You need to rest." I didn't reply. Finally, the printer whirred to life. Miller ripped the paper off and adjusted his glasses. He frowned. He looked at the paper, then back at the sample, then at me. "Ike, where did you get this?" Miller asked, his voice low and serious. "Is it heart medicine?" I asked, bracing myself. Miller laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Heart medicine?" "Ike, this is a high-grade neuroinhibitor. It's a synthetic compound used in research to slow down neural pathways." "What does that mean in English?" I demanded. "It means it shuts down your brain's ability to communicate with your body," Miller explained. "It causes tremors, memory loss, confusion, and disorientation. It mimics the symptoms of rapid-onset Alzheimer's. But here is the kicker, Ike." He pointed to a red line on the graph. "If you take this consistently for more than a year, it accumulates in the cardiac tissue. It weakens the heart muscle until it just stops. It causes heart failure that looks completely natural on an autopsy." I felt my knees go weak. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. Marcus. They had already done it to Marcus. And I was halfway there. "Is it lethal?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. In this dosage, Miller looked at me grimly. "If you took this every day for 6 months, you would be a vegetable. Another 6 months and you would be in a box. Who gave you this?" Ike, I snatched the report from his hand. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket right next to the red USB drive. I didn't answer him. I couldn't tell him that the person trying to kill me was the woman who had sworn to love me in sickness and in health. "Thanks, Doc," I said, turning to the door. "I owe you one." I walked back to my truck. The sun was setting now, casting long, bloody shadows across the parking lot. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The knowledge had steadied them. I wasn't sick. I wasn't crazy. I was under attack. I looked at my phone. Another text from Loretta. "Bradley is here. Hurry home. We need to talk about the warehouse." I stared at the screen. They wanted my warehouse. They wanted my money. And they were willing to turn my brain into mush to get it. I started the engine. The old Ford roared to life, a deep, angry growl. "I'm coming home, Loretta," I said to the empty cab. "But I'm not the man you think I am." I pulled out of the lot, driving fast. I wasn't driving home to die. I was driving home to go to war. Sunday dinner at the Turner household used to be a sacred event. For 40 years, the smell of Loretta's pot roast and collard greens meant safety. It meant family. It meant that no matter how hard the week had been on the construction site, no matter how many permits were denied or how many pipes burst, I could come home, sit at the head of the mahogany table and feel like a king. But this Sunday, as I sat there watching the steam rise from the green beans, I didn't feel like a king. I felt like a target. And the dining room didn't smell like home anymore. It smelled like treachery. Bradley, my son-in-law, walked in 20 minutes late as usual. He didn't knock. He just breezed through the front door like he owned the deed to the place. Maybe he thought he already did. Bradley was 35 years old, white with teeth so white they looked fake. and a tan that definitely didn't come from working under the sun like I did. He was a high-end real estate broker, the kind of guy who sold glass condos to people who had more money than sense. He wore a suit that cost more than my first truck, and he always looked at me with this amused, pitying expression like I was a relic from a museum that needed to be dusted off. "Hey there, big guy," Bradley boomed, slapping me on the shoulder way too hard. He always called me big guy. It wasn't a compliment. It was his way of reducing me to my size, implying that while I was big, I was also dumb. He kissed Loretta on the cheek, lingering just a second too long, and then sat down next to my daughter, Keisha. Keisha didn't look up. She was staring at her empty plate, her shoulders hunched forward. She looked smaller than I remembered. My little girl who used to run job sites with me in her pink hard hat now looked like a ghost in her own life. Bradley poured himself a glass of my best wine without asking. He took a long sip, swirled it around, and then looked at me with that shark-like grin. "So, big guy, we need to talk business," he said, cutting into the roast beef before anyone had even said grace. Loretta smiled from the other end of the table. It was that same tight, watchful smile she had worn in the garage. "Listen to Bradley, honey," she said. "He has such a brilliant mind for finances. He's only trying to help us secure our future." I gripped my fork under the table until my knuckles turned white. I knew exactly where this was going. I had the lab report in my pocket. I knew they were poisoning me. Now I was about to find out why. "What is it this time, Bradley?" I asked, keeping my voice slow and gravelly. I made sure to let my hand tremble a little as I reached for my water glass. I had to play the part. I had to be the confused, deteriorating old man they wanted me to be. Bradley leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Ike, I have stumbled upon a gold mine, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There is a development group looking to build a massive eco-friendly shopping complex near the old industrial district. They are desperate for land, and they are paying top dollar." He paused for dramatic effect. "I'm talking about the warehouse Ike. That old heap of rust you've got sitting on 4th Street. It's sitting there gathering dust. It's bleeding you dry with property taxes. I have a buyer lined up who is willing to take it off your hands for a premium, but we have to move fast. The offer expires on Tuesday." My heart slammed against my ribs. The warehouse on 4th Street wasn't just a heap of rust. It was the headquarters of Turner Construction for 30 years. It was where I stored my heavy machinery. It was where I taught young men from the neighborhood how to weld, how to lay brick, how to be men. It was fully paid off. It was prime real estate. And it was worth 3 times whatever lowball number Bradley was about to throw at me. I looked at him, feigning confusion. "You want to sell the shop?" "But Bradley, that's where I keep the excavators. That's where the office is. I built that place with my own hands in 1982. Bradley sighed, a loud, exaggerated sound of frustration. He looked at Loretta and rolled his eyes. "See, this is what I'm talking about. He's attached to junk." He turned back to me, speaking slowly and loudly as if I were a child or deaf. "Ike, listen to me. You are retired. You don't need excavators anymore. You don't need an office. You are 71 years old. You should be resting, not worrying about a dilapidated building filled with scrap metal. You need liquidity. You need cash for your care. For my care." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Loretta chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "He's right, sweetheart. Your medical bills are going to go up. We need to be realistic. That warehouse is just a burden. Bradley is doing us a huge favor by handling this." I looked at Keisha. She was cutting her meat into tiny, microscopic pieces. She hadn't taken a single bite. "Keisha," I asked softly, "what do you think that shop was going to be yours one day? Remember, we talked about turning it into a design studio for you?" Keisha's head snapped up. For a split second, I saw a flash of the old fire in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak. She looked at me pleadingly. But then Bradley cleared his throat. It wasn't a loud noise, just a low rumble, but it made Keisha freeze. She looked at her husband, and I saw pure, unadulterated terror in her eyes. She looked back down at her plate. "I think Bradley knows best, Dad," she whispered. "You should sell." That broke my heart more than the poison. My daughter was in on it. Or worse, she was being held hostage by it. I looked back at Bradley. He was smirking. He knew he had won. He thought he was playing chess with a pigeon. I rubbed my forehead, pretending to have a headache. "I don't know," I mumbled. "It's all so confusing. My head feels foggy today. I can't think straight about numbers." This was the test. I watched them closely. Across the table, Bradley looked at Loretta and winked. It was quick, a subtle twitch of the eyelid, but I saw it. Loretta gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was the confirmation of everything Marcus had warned me about. The poison made me foggy, the fogginess made me compliant, and the compliance would make me sign away my life's work. Bradley reached into his designer leather briefcase that he had set on the floor. "Don't worry about the thinking part." "Big guy Bradley," said his voice smooth as oil. "That's what family is for. We do the thinking for you. Since you've been having these episodes of confusion, and since your hand has been so shaky lately, I took the liberty of drawing up some paperwork to make this easier on everyone." He pulled out a thick stack of documents and slid them across the table right next to the gravy boat. The title at the top of the page screamed at me in bold black letters, "Durable Power of Attorney." I stared at it. This wasn't a sales contract. This was a surrender. If I signed this, Bradley would have full legal control over every asset I owned. My bank accounts, my properties, my medical decisions, everything. He wouldn't just sell the warehouse. He would drain me dry and then throw me in the cheapest state-run nursing home he could find while he and Loretta lived it up in Miami. I looked up at him. He had a pen in his hand, a fancy gold Mont Blanc pen. He clicked it open and held it out to me. "Just sign right here at the bottom, Ike," he said. "It just says that I can handle the sale for you so you don't have to stress. It authorizes me to deal with the banks and the lawyers. It's standard procedure for elderly parents." I looked at Loretta. She was leaning forward, her breath held. "Just sign it, honey," she urged. "Then you can go take a nice long nap. I'll bring you your evening milk, my evening milk, the second dose of poison." I reached out and took the pen. My hand was shaking violently. I let it shake. I wanted them to see the weakness. I wanted them to feel victory so close they could taste it. I brought the pen tip to the paper. I watched Bradley's eyes dilate. He was practically salivating. I hesitated. I lifted the pen. I can't read the fine print without my reading glasses," I stammered. "Where are my glasses?" Loretta jumped up. "I'll get them." "They're in the study." "No," I said, dropping the pen. My voice got a little stronger just for a moment. "No, I'm too tired. My eyes hurt. I can't do this right now." The room went silent. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Bradley's smile vanished. His face went red. "It's just a signature," Ike snapped, his tone losing its polish. "Just sign the damn paper. We have a deadline." I pushed the papers back toward him. "I said not tonight, Bradley," I whined, playing the petulant child. "I want to watch my show. I'll look at it tomorrow. Or maybe Tuesday, when my head is clear." Bradley looked like he was about to flip the table. He gripped the edge of the wood so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked at Loretta, his eyes screaming, "Do something." Loretta placed a hand on Bradley's arm to calm him. She turned to me, her voice icy calm. "Of course, Ike. You rest. We can do this tomorrow morning. First thing, after you've had a good night's sleep." I stood up, using the table to support my weight. I saw the look they exchanged. It was a look that said, "Tonight, we increase the dose. Tonight, we make sure he's compliant by morning." I shuffled out of the dining room, leaving the untouched roast beef and the unsigned death warrant on the table. "Good night, everyone," I mumbled. As I walked down the hallway, I heard Bradley hiss, "We can't wait until Tuesday, Loretta. The investors are walking if I don't have the deed by noon tomorrow. He needs to be handled." "Don't worry," Loretta whispered back. "I'll make a double batch of the sedative tonight. He won't know his own name by breakfast. He'll sign whatever you put in front of him." I made it to the stairs and started to climb. Every step was a battle against the urge to turn around and beat Bradley within an inch of his life. But I couldn't. Not yet. Physical violence would only get me arrested, and that would give them exactly what they wanted me out of the way. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the general, not the soldier. I waited until I heard the clinking of dishes downstairs stop. I waited until I heard the TV turn on in the living room. Then I crept back out into the hallway, silent as a shadow. I needed to plant the bug under the dining room table. I needed them on tape. I needed a confession. Because tomorrow morning, when they tried to hand me that pen again, I wasn't going to sign a power of attorney. I was going to sign their arrest warrants. But first, I had to survive the night. And I had a feeling the warm milk Loretta was preparing was going to be the strongest cocktail yet. I gripped the banister. My war had officially begun. They say a man's home is his castle, a fortress where he can let his guard down and close his eyes in peace. But as I stood in the middle of my silent living room on Monday morning, I realized my castle had been breached. The enemy wasn't banging on the gates with a battering ram. The enemy was already inside making coffee in my kitchen and sleeping in my bed. I waited until Loretta left for her weekly bridge club meeting. I watched her pull out of the driveway in the Mercedes I bought her for her 50th birthday. She waved at the neighbor, looking for all the world like a saint. As soon as her taillights disappeared around the corner, I went to work. I didn't go to the construction site. I went to the shoebox in my closet. My hands were steady now. The rage had calcified into something cold and hard like cured concrete. I took out the listening devices. They were small black discs no bigger than a quarter. I had bought them years ago to catch a foreman who was stealing copper wire from my job sites. I never thought I would use them to catch my wife stealing my life. I walked into the dining room. This table was made of solid oak. We had bought it when Keisha was just a baby. We had celebrated 40 Thanksgivings here. I remembered holding Loretta's hand across this wood, praying for our family. Now I crawled underneath it like a thief. I used double-sided industrial tape to secure the first bug right under the head of the table where Bradley always sat. Next, I went to the bedroom. Our bedroom. The sanctuary where we had whispered dreams in the dark. I felt a wave of nausea as I looked at the pillows. I taped the second device behind the heavy mahogany headboard right on Loretta's side. If she was plotting my demise before she went to sleep, I was going to hear every word. I grabbed my keys and left the house. I couldn't be there. I needed to be somewhere neutral. I drove to a small park overlooking the city skyline. I sat on a bench surrounded by pigeons and young mothers pushing strollers. They looked so happy, so oblivious. I wondered if any of them knew that the people they loved were capable of monsters. I put my earbuds in. I connected the receiver to my phone, and I waited. It took 3 hours. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the grass. My phone buzzed. The app signaled audio detected, dining room. My heart stopped. Then it started beating a war drum against my ribs. I pressed listen. At first there was just the sound of silverware clinking on china, then the sound of liquid being poured. "You need to relax, Bradley." It was Loretta's voice, calm, soothing, the same voice she used when she told me everything was going to be okay. "I can't relax." Loretta Bradley's voice was sharp, frantic. He sounded like a cornered animal. "Do you know what time it is? The investors are breathing down my neck. I promised them the deed to the warehouse by Wednesday. If I don't deliver, they are going to pull the funding. And if they pull the funding, the audit happens." Audit. I sat up straighter on the bench. So that was it. Bradley wasn't just looking for an investment. He was covering a hole, a big one. Loretta sighed on the recording. "I told you to be patient. Ike is stubborn. You know that. He's like a mule. If you push him too hard, he digs his heels in." "We don't have time for patience." Bradley slammed something onto the table. I jumped even though I was miles away. The audio spiked. "He suspects something," Bradley hissed. "Did you see the way he looked at the pen last night? And that coughing fit, I'm telling you, the old man is playing us." "He's not playing anything," Loretta replied dismissively. "He's confused. The medication is working. He's just having moments of clarity. It happens." "Moments of clarity." Bradley laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. He looked at me like he wanted to strangle me. "We need to up the dose, Loretta. We need to double it." I froze. The world around me, the birds, the traffic, the wind faded away. All I could hear was the conversation happening in my dining room. "We can't double it," Loretta said. Her voice wasn't filled with horror. It was filled with calculation. "If we give him too much too fast, it will show up in the toxicology report, or he'll have a seizure. We need this to look like natural decline." "I don't care about natural decline," Bradley shouted. "I care about staying out of prison. If he doesn't sign that power of attorney tomorrow, I am finished. And if I go down, you go down. Remember who helped you move the money from his retirement account last year?" I gasped. My hand flew to my mouth. They had already touched the retirement account. I hadn't checked it in months. I trusted Loretta to handle the bills. There was a silence on the tape. Then Loretta spoke, her voice lower, darker. "Fine. We will increase it tonight, but not double. 1.5 times. That should be enough to make him compliant, but keep him breathing. Keep him breathing." She said it like I was a houseplant. She was trying not to kill before the house sold. "And if that doesn't work," Bradley asked, "if he still refuses?" "Then we go to Plan B," Loretta said. "What is Plan B?" We call Dr. Evans, Loretta said. We tell him Ike has become violent, that he threatened us. We get him committed. An emergency competency hearing. If the doctor testifies that Ike is a danger to himself and others due to advanced dementia, the court will grant temporary guardianship to me immediately. We won't need his signature. We'll just need a judge's stamp. I felt the blood drain from my face. A competency hearing. They were going to declare me insane. They were going to lock me away in a padded room, medicated to the gills, screaming the truth while everyone looked at me with pity. It was a fate worse than death. It was the complete erasure of my dignity, my legacy, and my freedom. That takes too long, Bradley whined. It takes 48 hours, Loretta snapped. And it's cleaner. Once he's in the facility, he's not our problem anymore. We can sell the warehouse, sell the house, and move to the coast. He'll be comfortable. He'll be asleep most of the time. Don't make him suffer, Loretta added. And for a split second, I thought I heard mercy. I just don't want him screaming, she continued. It upsets the neighbors, and we don't want the police asking questions about why the sweet old man next door is yelling for help. Just keep him sleeping, Bradley. That's all we need. Just keep him sleeping. I pulled the earbuds out of my ears. I couldn't listen anymore. I felt like I was drowning in sludge. I looked at the city skyline. I had built half the foundations in that view. I was a man of respect. I was a deacon in my church. I was a father. And here I was sitting on a park bench listening to my wife and son-in-law discuss whether to overdose me or institutionalize me, based solely on which option was faster for their bank account. The pain in my chest was real this time. It wasn't the poison. It was a broken heart. A heart that had beaten for that woman for 40 years. I remembered the day we got married. She looked so beautiful in white. She promised to love me until death did us part. I realized now that she was just rushing the death part along. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was razor sharp. The fog was gone. The confusion was gone. They wanted a war. They had one. They wanted to certify me insane. I would show them insanity. They wanted to sell my warehouse. I would make sure that by the time I was done with them, they wouldn't even be able to afford a cardboard box to live in. I checked the time. It was 5 p.m. I had about 2 hours before I had to be home for dinner. 2 hours to set the next phase of my plan in motion. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. The police would arrest them, sure. But then there would be bail. There would be lawyers. There would be plea deals. Bradley would probably wiggle his way out of it, and Loretta would play the victim claiming she was coerced. No. I needed something more permanent. I needed to destroy them completely. I needed to strip them of the one thing they loved more than me. Their money. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It was the private line of my personal attorney, a man named Saul. Not the family lawyer Loretta knew. Saul was a shark. He handled my commercial contracts. He knew where every body was buried in the Atlanta construction scene. Saul, I said when he answered. It's Ike. Don't ask me how I am. Just listen. I need you to meet me at the warehouse in 20 minutes. Bring the paperwork for a revocable living trust. And bring a notary. Ike Saul sounded confused. It's after hours. Can't this wait until morning? No, I said, my voice dropping to a growl. By morning I might be in a straitjacket. Meet me there. And Saul, bring the paperwork to transfer everything. The house, the accounts, the cars, the company, everything. I want it all moved out of my name and into the trust tonight. But who is the beneficiary, Saul asked. Me, I said, sole trustee. And in the event of my incapacitation or death, I paused. I thought about Keisha, my silence at the dinner table, her fear. Make the beneficiary a charitable foundation, I said. The Marcus Robinson Fund for Elder Abuse. I hung up the phone. I walked back to my truck. The sun had set. The streetlights were flickering on. I was going home to eat dinner with my executioners. I was going to smile. I was going to drink my water carefully. And I was going to let them think they were winning. Because tomorrow, when they brought Dr. Evans to the house to declare me incompetent, they were going to find out that the crazy old man had just outsmarted them all. They wanted to play the game of who controls the money. Fine. I just flipped the board. I started the engine. The rumble of the Ford felt like a promise. I'm coming for you, Bradley, I whispered. And I'm bringing hell with me. Tuesday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and my wife was humming in the kitchen as if she wasn't plotting to have me committed to a mental institution before the week was out. I sat in my favorite leather armchair in the living room, the one I had bought after landing the Midtown Plaza contract 15 years ago. It used to feel like a throne. Today it felt like the witness stand in a kangaroo court. I knew they were coming. Thanks to the bug I had planted under the dining room table, I knew the exact time of the execution. 10 o'clock sharp. Bradley had said he was bringing a specialist, a friend from the club, someone who understood discretion. That is code for someone who can be bought. At 9:55, a black BMW pulled into the driveway behind Bradley's flashy sports car. I watched through the sheer curtains. The man who stepped out didn't look like a doctor who made house calls out of the kindness of his heart. He looked like a lawyer who had decided to wear a stethoscope for a costume party. He was wearing a three-piece Italian suit that cost more than a bricklayer makes in a year, and he carried a sleek leather briefcase that looked like it had never held a patient file in its life. I leaned back in the chair and let my mouth hang open slightly. I let my hands rest on my knees, trembling rhythmically. I made my eyes go a little unfocused, staring at a spot on the carpet just to the left of the coffee table. If they wanted a senile old man, I was going to give them a performance worthy of an Academy Award. The front door opened. I didn't turn my head. "Hey, big guy!" Bradley's voice boomed through the entryway, overly cheerful, overly loud. "Look who I brought to see you." Loretta walked in first, wiping her hands on her apron. She had that look on her face, the one that said, "Poor dear, he is fading fast." She walked over and patted my shoulder. "Ike, honey, this is Dr. Evans. He is a friend of Bradley's. He just stopped by to say hello and see how you are doing, since you have been feeling a little under the weather." I slowly turned my head, making the movement jerky and stiff. I looked at Dr. Evans. He had cold, dead eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. He smelled of expensive cologne and antiseptic. "Dr. Evans," I mumbled, slurring the words just a fraction. "I don't need a doctor. I need my glasses. I have your glasses right here," Ike Loretta said, handing me the spectacles that were already in my shirt pocket. "See?" Bradley whispered to the doctor, loud enough for me to hear. "He doesn't even know they are on his chest. It is getting worse by the hour." Dr. Evans pulled up a chair and sat directly in front of me. He invaded my personal space, leaning in close. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a notepad, but no medical instruments. No blood pressure cuff. No thermometer. This wasn't a medical exam. It was an interrogation designed to build a case file for a judge. "Good morning, Mr. Turner," Evans said, his voice smooth and condescending. "I just want to ask you a few simple questions, just to check your memory. Is that okay?" I stared at his tie. It was red with little blue patterns. I blinked slowly. "Is it raining?" I asked, looking at the sunny window. Evans scribbled something on his pad. He exchanged a look with Bradley, a look of satisfaction. "No, Mr. Turner, it is sunny. Can you tell me what year it is?" I knew what year it was. I knew it was 2024. I knew the date, the time, and the current interest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage. But I furrowed my brow. I looked distressed. I started picking at a loose thread on the arm of the chair. The year, I repeated. It is the year we finished the stadium. 1996. Num. "Wait, is Keisha in school today?" Bradley let out a dramatic sigh behind me. "Jesus," he muttered. "He thinks it is the 90s. Evans nodded, writing furiously. "Disorientation to time and place. Severe regression." "Okay, Mr. Turner. Can you tell me who the President of the United States is?" I looked at Bradley. I saw the greed in his eyes. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He was counting the money from the warehouse sale in his head right now. He thought I was gone. He thought the drugs had turned my brain into oatmeal. "The President," I said slowly. "The President is that nice man on the TV. The one with the hair, I let my voice trail off into a mumble. "Specific naming deficit," Evans whispered to himself as he wrote. He looked up at me with a smirk. "Mr. Turner, I am going to say 3 words to you. I want you to repeat them back to me and then remember them. I will ask you for them again in 5 minutes. Are you ready?" I nodded vaguely. "Apple, penny, table, apple, penny, table," I repeated, making my voice sound hollow. Good. Now while we wait, can you tell me who these people are standing behind me? He pointed to Loretta and Bradley. This was the moment. I had planned this all night. I knew that if I just acted forgetful, they might think I had good days and bad days. I needed to convince them that I was completely detached from reality. I needed them to believe I was no longer a person, but an object to be managed. I looked at Loretta. That is Loretta, I said softly. She makes the soup. Correct, Evans said. And him, I looked at Bradley. I looked him right in the eye. I saw the arrogance. I saw the disrespect. I saw the man who was poisoning my body and trying to steal my legacy. I smiled. A big, goofy, vacuous smile. Come here, Buster, I said, patting my leg as if I were calling a dog. Come here, boy. Who is a good dog? Buster wants a treat. The room went dead silent. Buster was the name of the golden retriever we had buried 10 years ago. Bradley's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He looked insulted, but beneath the insult I saw pure triumph. He thinks I am the dog, Bradley said, his voice trembling with suppressed laughter. He literally thinks I am the dead dog. Dr. Evans closed his notebook with a snap. It sounded like a gavel banging in a courtroom. I think we have seen enough, Evans said, standing up. The cognitive decline is much more advanced than you described on the phone, Bradley. This isn't just early onset. This is rapid deterioration. He is completely incapacitated. So we can get the emergency order, Loretta asked. She didn't look at me. She looked at the notepad. Evans nodded. I will write up the affidavit immediately. I can testify that he is unable to recognize immediate family members, is disoriented to time, and lacks the capacity to make financial or medical decisions. We can have the judge sign off on the temporary guardianship by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. That was their deadline. Bradley clapped his hands together. That is great news. I mean, tragic, of course. But good that we can finally get him the help he needs. He looked down at me one last time. I was still smiling at him, patting my leg. Good boy, Buster, I whispered. Bradley sneered. Enjoy the retirement home, big guy. They allow pets. Maybe you can find a real dog there. They walked out of the room. I heard them in the hallway congratulating each other. I heard the front door open and close as they walked Dr. Evans to his car. Loretta was laughing, a light, airy laugh that sounded like freedom to her. I waited until the heavy oak door clicked shut. I waited until I heard the BMW engine fade down the street. I stopped patting my leg. The goofy smile vanished from my face, replaced by a look of cold, hard granite. I stood up. I didn't tremble. I didn't stumble. I walked to the window and watched them. Bradley and Loretta were standing in the driveway hugging. They thought they had won the lottery. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a burner phone I had bought at a convenience store the day before. I wasn't using my regular cell. They probably monitored that too. I dialed a number I had memorized 30 years ago. Saul picked up on the first ring. It is done, I said. My voice was steady and strong. Did they take the bait, Saul asked. Hook, line, and sinker, I replied. They brought a doctor. I played the part. They are filing for emergency guardianship tomorrow morning. They think I think my son-in-law is a golden retriever. Saul chuckled darkly. That is a nice touch, Ike. Okay, we have to move fast. I have the papers ready on my desk. Execute the trust I commanded. Right now. I want the deed to the warehouse, the house, the construction company holdings, and the liquid cash in the joint accounts transferred into the Isaiah Turner Irrevocable Trust immediately. I can do it electronically. Saul said, the sound of typing already clattering in the background. But Ike, you understand what this means. Once this is filed, you legally own nothing. The trust owns everything. You are just the trustee. I understand, I said. It means that when they go to court tomorrow to get guardianship over my assets, they will find an empty shell. They can be guardians of an old man, but they can't be guardians of a trust that I control. Exactly, Saul said. And since the transfer is happening 24 hours before the court order, it is legal and binding. They would have to prove you were insane yesterday to overturn it. And since you have been running your business and paying bills all month, that will be impossible to prove without a time machine. Do it, I said. And Saul, yeah, Ike, freeze the credit cards attached to the main account, the ones Bradley and Loretta use. Cut them off. I heard the enter key verify on the other end. Done, Saul said. The transfer is processing. By the time the bank opens tomorrow, you will be a pauper on paper, and the trust will be the richest entity in Atlanta. They are going to walk into that courtroom holding a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Thank you, Saul. I hung up the phone and destroyed the SIM card, flushing it down the toilet in the powder room. I walked back to the living room and sat down in my chair. I closed my eyes. I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't the victim. I was the architect. I had just built a wall around my life that they couldn't climb, couldn't break, and couldn't steal. Tonight, I would have to play the fool one last time. I would have to endure one more dinner, one more dose of poison fake, swallowed into a napkin. But it would be easier tonight because I knew that while they were dreaming of spending my millions, I had already moved the vault. When Bradley woke up tomorrow, he wasn't going to be a millionaire. He was going to be the broke son-in-law of a very lucid, very angry man who controlled every dime of the family fortune. I looked at the spot on the rug where I had stared during the exam. "Good boy, Buster," I whispered to the empty room. "Good boy." Tomorrow, the dog was going to bite back. The house breathes differently when you know there is a predator sleeping down the hall. For 40 years, the silence of my home at night was a comfort. It was the sound of a job well done, of a family safe and sound. But that Tuesday night, the silence felt heavy. It felt like the air before a thunderstorm, charged with static and the metallic taste of danger. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan cutting through the darkness. My mind was racing. I had won the battle of the bank accounts. Thanks to Saul, my assets were safe in the trust. But Bradley and Loretta didn't know that yet. To them, I was still the golden goose, and they were getting impatient with how long it was taking to pluck my feathers. My throat felt dry, parched. The stress was dehydrating me, or maybe it was the residual effect of the poison I had ingested over the last few months before I caught on. I needed water. I sat up. The clock on the nightstand read 2:15 in the morning, the witching hour, the time when secrets are whispered and traps are sprung. I swung my legs out of bed. My joints popped. I was 71, yes, but I wasn't decrepit. I was a man who had carried bags of cement on his shoulders until he was 60. My body was worn, but it was made of iron, not glass. I opened my bedroom door. The hallway was pitch black. Loretta liked to keep the nightlights off to save electricity, a habit she developed back when we were poor and never shook even after we had millions. Now that darkness felt intentional. I walked toward the stairs. This staircase was my pride and joy. I had built it myself. Solid oak hand-carved banisters, wide steps meant for grand entrances. I knew every inch of it. I knew which board squeaked on the third step. I knew exactly how many paces it took to get to the landing. I reached the top of the stairs. I reached out for the handrail. My hand found the smooth wood polished by years of use. I took the first step. Solid. I took the second step, and then the world fell out from under me. My right foot landed on the runner, the thick, expensive Persian carpet that ran down the center of the stairs. But instead of gripping the wood, the carpet slid. It shot forward like it was on ice. My leg flew out in front of me. My center of gravity vanished. I was falling backward, plummeting into the dark void of the stairwell. In that split-second time didn't just slow down. It stopped. I saw the ceiling. I felt the rush of wind. I thought about Marcus. I thought, this is it. This is how they do it. A broken neck at the bottom of the stairs. An accident. A tragic fall for a clumsy old man. But instinct is faster than thought, and my instincts were forged on high-rise steel beams and slippery scaffolding. As my body tipped backward, my left hand, my hammer hand, clamped down on the banister. My fingers, thick and calloused, locked onto the wood with a grip strength that hadn't diminished with age. My shoulder wrenched painfully as my full weight swung against the joint. I grunted a guttural sound of strain. My feet scrambled for purchase on the slippery wood, kicking wildly. I slammed into the banister, my ribs taking the hit, but I didn't let go. I hung there, suspended over the drop, breathing hard, my heart hammering like a jackhammer in my chest. I pulled myself up, dragging my body back onto the safety of the landing. I sat there in the dark, gasping for air, sweat instantly soaking my pajamas. I reached out and touched the carpet runner on the second step. It was loose, completely loose. I felt along the edge of the wood. The heavy industrial staples that held the carpet in place hadn't just popped out from wear and tear. The wood around them was chewed up. Someone had pried them out. Someone had deliberately removed the anchors, turning my own staircase into a slide. This wasn't negligence. This was a booby trap. Suddenly, the hallway light flicked on, blinding me. Dad. Oh my God. Dad. It was Bradley. He burst out of the guest room at the bottom of the stairs. He wasn't groggy. He wasn't rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was wide awake. He was wearing his silk pajamas, and he moved with the energy of a man who had been waiting for a sound. He ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, but he didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. He stopped a few steps below me. He looked at me sitting on the landing, clutching my chest. He looked at the carpet that was bunched up under my feet. "Are you okay, big guy? What happened? I heard a crash." He reached out to touch me, but I flinched. I couldn't help it. My body recoiled from him like he was a venomous snake. I slipped. I rasped. I had to play the part. I couldn't let him know that I knew. I had to be the victim. The carpet. It moved. Bradley looked at the carpet. He reached down and lifted the loose edge. He shook his head, making a tisk-tisk sound that made my blood boil. "It didn't move, Dad. You slipped. You must have dragged your feet. Look at this. You kicked the carpet loose." He was gaslighting me in real time. He was looking at the pry marks I had just felt with my own fingers and telling me I had done it with my slippers. I don't think so. I stammered, trying to sound pathetic. It felt loose. Bradley stood up, towering over me. He crossed his arms. His face hardened. The mask of the concerned son-in-law slipped, revealing the cold, calculating monster underneath. "This is exactly what Dr. Evans was talking about, Ike. Your coordination is gone. Your spatial awareness is shot. You could have broken your neck. You could have died tonight." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that sounded like a threat. "We can't keep doing this, big guy. It's too dangerous. You are a danger to yourself. You are a liability in this house." I looked up at him. I saw the truth in his eyes. He didn't care if I broke my neck. In fact, he was banking on it. A fall would have solved all his problems. No need for a competency hearing. No need for a nursing home. Just a funeral and a reading of the will. "I'm sorry," I whispered, forcing tears into my eyes. "I'm just so clumsy lately." "You're not clumsy," Bradley said, his voice devoid of empathy. "You are deteriorating, and I can't have that on my conscience. I can't sleep at night knowing you might tumble down the stairs and break a hip." He turned and looked down the stairs, then back at me. "We were going to wait until the end of the month," he said. "But after this, no. We can't wait. I'm calling the facility in the morning. They have an emergency bed available. We are moving you out this week." This week. The words hung in the air like a sentence. They were accelerating the timeline. They knew the drugs were working too slowly. Or maybe they suspected I wasn't taking them. So they had moved to physical elimination. And since I had survived the fall, they were moving to immediate incarceration. Loretta appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She was wearing her robe, clutching her chest. "Is he alive?" she asked. It wasn't, "Is he okay?" It was, "Is he alive?" "He's fine," Bradley called down, his voice thick with annoyance. "He just slipped. He's lucky he has a hard head." "But Loretta, look at this. He almost killed himself. We can't keep him here. It's irresponsible." Loretta looked up at me. Her face was in shadow, but I could feel her cold calculation. "You're right, Bradley," she said. "I'll pack his bags in the morning." Bradley reached down and grabbed my arm. He didn't help me up gently. He hoisted me up with a grip that was painful, digging his fingers into my bicep. "Come on, old man. Let's get you back to bed before you break something else. Like the furniture." He practically dragged me back to my bedroom. He shoved me toward the bed. "Stay there," he commanded. "Don't come out. If you need water, yell. Although knowing you, you'll probably forget why you yelled by the time we get there." He laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh. He walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob. "You know, Ike, it's really for the best," he said, not turning around. "The nursing home has ramps, no stairs. You'll be safe there. You can just sit in a chair and look out the window and exist. That's all you have to do. Just exist, and let us handle the real world." He slammed the door. I heard the lock click. They had locked me in, from the outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart still racing from the adrenaline of the fall. My shoulder throbbed where I had hit the banister. I rubbed the bruise forming on my arm. They had tried to kill me. Tonight, on my own stairs. And now they were locking me up. I looked at the window. The moon was high and bright. I realized then that I had made a miscalculation. I thought this was a legal battle. I thought it was a chess match about money and assets. It wasn't. It was a street fight. It was a fight for survival. Bradley was desperate. The investors he mentioned on the tape must be more dangerous than I thought. He needed that money now, and I was the only thing standing in his way. If I stayed in this house another night, I wouldn't wake up. The next accident wouldn't be a loose carpet, it would be a gas leak, or a fire, or a pillow over my face while I slept. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. I had 6 hours before the courts opened. 6 hours before they filed for guardianship. 6 hours before they came to drag me to a place where people go to be forgotten. I stood up. My legs were steady now. The fear had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to the nursing home, and I wasn't going to die on my staircase. I went to the closet. I didn't pack clothes. I reached into the back behind the winter coats and pulled out a small fireproof lockbox. I keyed in the code. Inside was my passport, a stash of emergency cash, and the original deed to the warehouse. I put them in my pocket. Then I went to the window. It was a second-story drop. 30 years ago, I would have jumped it without thinking. Tonight, I would have to be careful. I opened the window. The night air was cool. I looked back at the bedroom door. The lock was flimsy. I could kick it down if I wanted to, but that would wake them up. That would cause a scene, and right now I needed the element of surprise. I climbed out onto the ledge. I gripped the trellis that ran down the side of the house, a trellis I had installed for Loretta's prize-winning roses. The irony didn't escape me. The roses she loved so much were about to provide my escape route. I climbed down, hand over hand, my feet finding purchase in the vines. I hit the ground with a soft thud. I looked up at the dark house. It looked like a mausoleum. "Goodbye, Loretta," I whispered. "You wanted the house. You can have it. Let's see how much you like it when the lights get cut off." I crept to the detached garage. I didn't take my truck. It was too loud. It had a GPS tracker Bradley had installed for my safety. Instead, I wheeled out my old bicycle, the one I used to ride around the neighborhood with Keisha. I pedaled away into the darkness, leaving behind my home, my life, and the people who wanted to end it. I wasn't running away. I was regrouping. I was going to see Dante. I was going to see the son of the man they killed. And when I came back, I wasn't going to be Ike the victim. I was going to be the nightmare they never saw coming. Time was up. The game had changed. And now it was my turn to set the trap. The ride to the old industrial district where Dante lived nearly killed me. My knees, aching from the fall down the stairs, popped with every rotation of the bicycle pedals. I was 71 years old, escaping my own home on a rusted Schwinn like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. But I wasn't sneaking out to meet a girl. I was sneaking out to save my life. Dante Robinson was Marcus's son. He didn't follow his father into the construction business. He was part of the new generation. He lived in a converted loft that used to be a textile mill. He worked in cybersecurity, or as Marcus used to call it, paid hacking. I stood in front of his heavy steel door at 4:15 in the morning, my chest heaving, sweat dripping down my forehead. I pounded on the metal with my fist. "Open up, Dante. It's Ike." It took 3 minutes for the door to slide open. Dante stood there rubbing his eyes, wearing nothing but basketball shorts. He looked so much like his father it made my heart ache. The same broad shoulders, the same kindness in the eyes, although right now, those eyes were filled with confusion and irritation. Uncle Ike Dante squinted at me, then at the bicycle leaning against the brick wall. "What is going on? Is everything okay? You look like you went 12 rounds with a heavyweight." I didn't have time for small talk. I pushed past him into the loft. It was freezing inside, kept cold for the rows of computer servers humming in the corner. The place smelled of stale coffee and ozone. "I need your help, Dante," I said, collapsing onto his leather sofa. "And I need you to lock that door." Dante closed the door and flipped the heavy deadbolt. He walked over to me, his face serious now. "Is it Loretta? Is she okay? Did something happen to my mom?" I looked him dead in the eye. This was the hardest part. I had to break this boy's heart to save him. "Sit down, son," I said. Dante sat on the coffee table facing me. He saw the bruise forming on my arm where Bradley had grabbed me. He saw the terror in my eyes. "Your mom is fine, Dante, physically. But your dad, Marcus didn't die of a heart attack." Dante recoiled like I had slapped him. His face hardened. "Don't do that, Ike. The coroner said it was cardiac arrest. Dad had high blood pressure. Don't start with conspiracies. I'm grieving, okay, I don't need this." He stood up to walk away. He was angry. He had every right to be. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the red USB drive. "Your dad left this for me," I said, my voice steady. He told Steinberg to give it to me only if he died of a heart attack. He knew Dante. He knew they were killing him. Dante froze. He looked at the red drive. Then he looked at me. "Who is they?" he whispered. I pulled out the crumpled lab report from Dr. Miller. "Your mother," I said softly. "And my wife." Dante stared at me for a long time. The silence in the loft was deafening, broken only by the whirring of the computer fans. Finally, he snatched the drive from my hand. He didn't say a word. He walked over to his main desk, a cockpit of 5 glowing monitors. He plugged the drive in. I stood behind him as he clicked the file. When Marcus's face appeared on the screen, Dante let out a sound I will never forget. It was a whimper, a child crying for his father. We watched the video in silence. We listened to Marcus explain the poison. We listened to him warn us about the life insurance policies. We listened to a dead man beg for justice. When the screen went black, Dante didn't move. He sat there staring at his reflection in the monitor. His hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't make a sound. Then he stood up. He walked over to a metal filing cabinet and punched it. A loud, violent clang echoed through the room. He punched it again and again, screaming his rage into the empty air. I let him do it. He needed to get it out. When he finally stopped panting, his hand bleeding slightly, he turned to me. His eyes were no longer kind. They were cold. They were dangerous. "What do you want me to do, Uncle Ike?" he asked. I held up the lab report. "They are doing the same thing to me, Dante. Loretta has been poisoning me for 6 months. Tonight, Bradley tried to push me down the stairs. They are trying to get conservatorship over me by tomorrow morning. I moved the assets, but I need to stop them. I need to know why." "Why?" Dante asked. "It's for the money, obviously." "It's more than that," I said. "Bradley is desperate. He mentioned investors. He mentioned a deadline. He is scared, Dante. I need to know who he is in bed with. I need you to get inside his computer." Dante nodded. He sat back down at his chair. He cracked his knuckles. It was the same gesture Marcus used to make before lifting a heavy beam. "What is his email?" Dante asked. I gave him everything I knew. Bradley's email, his phone number, the name of his real estate firm. Dante's fingers flew across the keyboard. He wasn't just typing, he was playing an instrument. Screens flashed with code I didn't understand. Passwords were bypassed. Firewalls were breached. "I'm in his cloud backup," Dante muttered after 10 minutes. "Let's see what you've been up to, Bradley." He started scrolling through emails, text messages, and financial documents. "He's in deep," Ike, Dante said, his eyes scanning rapidly. "He has gambling debts, big ones, online poker, sports betting. He's down about 200 grand, that's a lot," I said, "but not enough to kill for." "Bradley makes good money. Keep watching," Dante said. He clicked on a folder marked Ecological Mall Project. This was the deal Bradley had been pushing me to sell the warehouse for. "Here it is," Dante said. He opened a spreadsheet. I looked at the numbers. Millions of dollars. Transfers from shell companies in Mexico and the Cayman Islands. "He's not building a mall," Dante said. "Look at these transfers. Inflow of $3 million, outflow of $2.8 million to a construction consultant in Panama the next day. This is classic structuring. He's layering the money." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means he is laundering money, Ike. He's washing cash for someone big." Dante opened another window. He cross-referenced the name of the shell company. Ozone Holdings, Dante read. He tapped a few more keys. A police database popped up. "Holy dirt," Dante whispered. "Ozone Holdings is a front for the Sinaloa cartel." The room spun. My son-in-law wasn't just a bad businessman. He was working for the cartel. He lost their money, didn't he? I asked, the pieces finally falling into place. Dante pointed to a frantic email thread dated 3 days ago. Subject: missing funds. Body: "You have until Friday, Bradley. If the $4 million isn't replaced in the clean account, we don't come for the money. We come for you." "That's it," I said. "He gambled away the cartel's money, or he tried to skim off the top and got caught. Now he needs to replace it. And your warehouse is the only asset big enough and clean enough to cover the hole." Dante finished. "If he sells your warehouse for $5 million, he pays back the cartel, covers his gambling debt, and keeps the change." "But there is a problem," Dante said. He stopped typing. He leaned in closer to the screen. What Dante brought up, a background program running on Bradley's laptop. "He has spyware installed on his machine," Dante said. "But he didn't install it." "Who did?" "The FBI," Dante said. Look at this signature. This is a federal keystroke logger. They have been watching him for months. They are building a RICO case. My blood ran cold. If I had signed that power of attorney, I whispered. If you had signed it, Dante said, looking at me with horror, Bradley would have used your name to sell the warehouse and transfer the funds. He would have used your trust to wash the cartel money. And when the FBI finally raided, they would have arrested me, I realized. Bradley would have claimed he was just following my orders. He would have used the dementia defense to say I was confused, or worse, he would have set me up as the mastermind. He was going to frame you, Ike Dante said. He was going to kill you or frame you. Either way, you were his escape hatch. I sat back feeling the weight of the betrayal crush my chest. It wasn't just greed, it was survival. Bradley was a drowning man and he was using me as his life raft, not caring if he drowned me in the process. And Loretta, I asked. Does she know Dante opened Loretta's text messages to Bradley? Loretta, did you fix the problem? The nursing home is ready. Bradley working on it. I need the warehouse deed. The investors are getting angry. Loretta, just get it done. I don't care how. I just want my share so I can leave. She knows he's in trouble, Dante said. She might not know it's the cartel. She might just think it's loan sharks, but she doesn't care. She just wants the payout. Dante turned to me. His face was grim. We can't go to the cops, Ike. Why not? Because if the FBI is watching and we tip them off now, they might arrest everyone to sort it out later. They might freeze your assets for years as proceeds of crime. You could lose the warehouse anyway. And Bradley, and if he knows the feds are coming, he might run, or he might try something desperate. So what do? I asked. Dante smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. We use his own technology against him. He needs that warehouse deed by noon today to save his life, right? Right. And he thinks you are a senile old man who is currently locked in his bedroom. Right. Dante cracked his knuckles again. Then let's give him exactly what he wants. But let's make sure that when he tries to cash that check, it blows up in his face. I can manipulate the bank transfers. I can reroute the routing numbers. We can let him think he sold the warehouse. We can let him transfer the money. And then Dante said, his eyes gleaming with vengeance, we redirect the funds. Not to the cartel, but to the FBI's evidence account, with a digital note attached from Bradley the Rat. That will get him killed, I said. Dante looked at the video of his father on the other screen. He killed my dad, Ike. I don't care if the cartel gets him or the FBI gets him, as long as he goes down. I looked at this young man. He was right. There was no room for mercy anymore. Do it, I said. But first I have to go back. Back, Dante asked. Are you crazy? I have to be there when the doctors come, I said. I have to play out the scene. If I disappear, they panic. If I stay, they think they have won. I need to keep them calm until the money moves. I stood up. My knees hurt, but my spirit was soaring. Print me out those emails, Dante, and print me the lab report. I'm going to need a little reading material for the party. Dante hit print. Be careful, Uncle Ike, he said. I'm not the one who needs to be careful, I said, grabbing the papers. I'm the one with the detonator. I walked out into the dawn. The sun was rising over Atlanta. It was going to be a beautiful day, a perfect day for a reckoning. I came back to the house just as the sun was burning off the morning mist. I walked through the front door with dirt on my shoes and leaves in my hair, looking every bit the confused wanderer they wanted me to be. Loretta and Bradley were in the kitchen, huddled over coffee, probably finalizing the details of my commitment hearing. When they saw me, they jumped like two kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Where have you been? Loretta shrieked, dropping her spoon. We were about to call the police. I didn't answer her. I just looked at Bradley. I looked at him with a wide, childish grin that didn't reach my eyes. I want to go fishing, I said. My voice was simple, demanding, like a toddler asking for candy. Fishing. Bradley scoffed. Ike, we have a doctor's appointment in 3 hours. We don't have time for fishing. I stomped my foot, a petulant old man tantrum. I want to go to the lake, I shouted. I want to catch the big one. If you take me fishing, I will sign the papers. I promise. I will sign anything you want. I just want to go to the lake one last time. Bradley and Loretta exchanged a look. I saw the gears turning in Bradley's head. He looked at the clock. It was 7 in the morning. The lake was 40 minutes away. If he took me, he could be back by 10. But more importantly, I saw the darkness bloom in his eyes. The lake, private property, no neighbors, deep water, and an old man who was already documented as being unstable and clumsy. It was the perfect opportunity. Why wait for a nursing home to slowly kill me when a tragic boating accident could solve his cartel problem by lunch? "All right," big guy Bradley said, standing up and smoothing his silk tie. "If that is what it takes to get you to sign the power of attorney, then let's go fishing." Loretta looked worried. "Bradley, are you sure the hearing is at—" "It's fine." Loretta Bradley cut her off, giving her a significant look. "We will be back, and Ike will be ready to sign everything. Won't you, Ike?" "Yes." I nodded vigorously. "I will sign. I just want to be on the water." 10 minutes later, we were in his Range Rover towing the small aluminum boat trailer I hadn't used in 5 years. The drive was silent. Bradley was texting furiously on his phone. I stared out the window, humming a gospel tune playing the part. But inside, my heart was cold. I was driving into the woods with my executioner, and he had no idea I was the one holding the axe. We arrived at the family cabin near Lake Lanier. It was desolate. The trees were tall and thick, blocking out most of the sun. The water was black and still like a mirror made of obsidian. There wasn't another soul for miles. Bradley hurried to launch the boat. He was sweating even though it was cool. He was nervous. Killing a man on paper is easy. Killing a man with your own hands is different. We got into the small metal boat. I sat in the back near the motor. Bradley sat in the front facing me. He rowed us out. He didn't want to start the motor. He wanted silence. When we were in the middle of the lake, far enough away that a scream would sound like a whisper to the shore, he stopped rowing. The boat drifted. The only sound was the water lapping against the metal hull. I picked up my fishing rod. I didn't bait the hook. I just cast the empty line into the black water. "You know, Bradley," I said, breaking the silence. My voice wasn't high and wavering anymore. It was lower, heavier. "What, Ike?" He sounded distracted. He was looking around, checking to make sure we were truly alone. "I was watching a nature documentary last night," I said. "About sharks. Great white sharks." Bradley laughed nervously. "That's nice, Ike. Focus on fishing. Did you know that sharks are the only creatures that eat their own kind even when they aren't starving?" I continued, reeling in the empty line slowly. "Most animals only kill for food or territory. But sharks. If a shark gets wounded, if it bleeds just a little bit, the other sharks in the school will turn on it. They smell the weakness, and they tear it apart." Bradley stopped looking at the shore. He looked at me. His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about, old man?" "I'm talking about blood in the water, son." I looked up at him. "I see the blood, Bradley. You are bleeding. You are bleeding money. You are bleeding time. And the big sharks, the ones you owe money to, they are circling." Bradley froze. His face went pale. The arrogance vanished, replaced by pure shock. How do you know about that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I just smiled, a calm, sane smile. "You thought you could feed me to them, didn't you?" I asked softly. "You thought if you threw the old man overboard, the sharks would eat me and leave you alone. That's why we are here, isn't it?" Bradley stood up. The boat rocked violently. Water splashed over the sides. "You have been listening," he hissed. "You senile old bat, you have been faking it." I didn't move. I sat perfectly still in the rocking boat. "Sit down, Bradley," I said. "You'll tip us over. And you know I can swim. Can you?" "With those Italian leather loafers on, I don't need to swim," Bradley snarled. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a heavy metal wrench he must have grabbed from the truck. "I'm going to bash your brains in and dump you right here. Nobody will find you. Everybody knows you are crazy. Everyone knows you wandered off." He took a step toward me. The boat dipped dangerously low. He raised the wrench. It was time. I reached into the tackle box sitting at my feet, but I didn't pull out a lure. I pulled out my Colt Python .357 Magnum. It was heavy chrome-plated and terrifying. I had owned it since 1975. I didn't point it at him. I didn't have to. I just set it on my lap. I pulled a rag from my pocket and started wiping the barrel casual as could be. Bradley stopped mid-step. The wrench froze in the air. His eyes bugged out of his head. He looked at the gun, then at me, then back at the gun. It looked like a cannon in my hand. "Sit. Down," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I said it with the authority of a man who had commanded crews of 200 men. Bradley collapsed back onto the bench seat. The wrench clattered to the floor of the boat. He was shaking, visibly shaking. Don't shoot me. Ike," he stammered. "Please. I wasn't going to do it. You were just what I asked, still polishing the gun. Just going to tighten a bolt on my skull." I lifted the gun and looked down the sight, aiming at a tree on the far shore past his head. "This gun is older than you are, Bradley," I said conversationally. "I haven't fired it in years. I wonder if the firing pin still works. What do you think? Should we test it?" I turned the gun slowly until it was pointing directly at his chest. Bradley put his hands up. Tears were streaming down his face. A grown man, a man who thought he was a king, reduced to a sobbing mess by a piece of steel and an old man's stare. "Ike, please. I'm sorry. It's the debt. They are going to kill me. You don't understand. They are going to cut me into pieces." I lowered the gun slightly. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You made a deal with the devil, and now you want to pay him with my soul." I clicked the hammer back. The sound echoed across the silent lake like a crack of thunder. "I should kill you right here," I whispered. "It would be self-defense. You came at me with a weapon. I could put a hole in you, dump you in the water, and tell the police you fell in. Who would they believe? The grieving widow's father or the man with gambling debts and cartel connections?" Bradley sobbed. "Please, Ike, I'll leave. I'll go away. I won't touch your money. Just let me go." I stared at him for a long minute. I let the silence stretch until he could barely breathe. "I'm not going to kill you, Bradley," I said finally, easing the hammer back down. He let out a massive breath of relief. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, Ike. Thank you." "I'm not going to kill you," I repeated, putting the gun back in the tackle box. "Because death is too easy. Death is an escape. And you don't get to escape." I picked up the oars. "Row us back," I commanded. Bradley looked confused. "Back? But what are we going to do?" "We are going to go to that doctor's appointment," I said. "You are going to drive me home. You are going to tell Loretta that I was confused and couldn't fish. And then you are going to go to the bank and try to sell my warehouse." Bradley stared at me. He couldn't process it. Why would you do that?" "Because I want to see you run," I said. "I want to see you sweat. I want you to spend every second of the next 24 hours wondering when the hammer's going to drop." I leaned forward. "Now row. Before I change my mind and decide to test the firing pin on your kneecap." Bradley grabbed the oars. He rowed like a madman. He rowed for his life. I sat back in the stern watching him. I watched the sweat drip off his nose. I watched the terror in his eyes every time he looked at me. He thought I was letting him go. He thought he had a second chance. He didn't know that I had already engaged Dante. He didn't know that by letting him sell the warehouse, I was handing him a rope to hang himself with. I wasn't the shark. I was the ocean, and he was just drowning in me. As we hit the shore, I patted his shoulder. He flinched so hard he almost fell into the mud. "Smile, son," I said. "We had a great trip. You didn't catch anything." But I did. I caught a rat. We got back in the truck. Bradley drove perfectly 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, terrified to speed, terrified to brake too hard. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. But I wasn't sleeping. I was counting down. The fishing trip was over. Now the real hunt began. And unlike Bradley, I didn't miss. They say money is the root of all evil, but in my line of work I found that debt is the devil's leash. If you hold a man's debt, you don't just own his bank account, you own his sleep, his dignity, and his future. Bradley thought he was answering to a faceless cartel or a cold banking algorithm. He didn't know that the leash around his neck was about to be held by the very man he was trying to bury. After the fishing trip, Bradley was a ghost. He dropped me off at the house and sped away, presumably to go vomit in a trash can or beg his investors for more time. He was rattled. The sight of my Colt python had shaken something loose in him. But fear fades. I knew that. By tomorrow, his greed would overpower his terror and he would be back for the kill. I needed a permanent chain. I waited until Loretta went into the garden to deadhead her prize-winning roses. I slipped out the back door and met Saul in the parking lot of a Waffle House 3 miles away. It wasn't the kind of place you expect to conduct million-dollar business, but it was the only place Loretta wouldn't be caught dead in. Saul looked nervous. He had a stack of documents in a manila folder that was thick enough to choke a horse. He was stirring his coffee, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. "Did you bring it?" I asked, sliding into the booth opposite him. Saul pushed the folder across the sticky table. "It's all here, Ike. But are you sure about this? This is a lot of liquid cash. You are depleting the emergency reserves of the construction company. If this goes south, you won't have enough to pay payroll next month." I looked at the papers. It was a purchase agreement for distressed assets, specifically the commercial loans and high-risk promissory notes attached to Bradley's real estate firm. Bradley had been sloppy. To cover his gambling losses and the money he had lost for the cartel, he had taken out predatory loans from secondary lenders, shadow banks that charged exorbitant interest but didn't ask too many questions. These lenders didn't care about Bradley, they just wanted their money, and like any bad debt, they were willing to sell it for 60 cents on the dollar just to get it off their books. I signed the check. It was for $1.2 million. It was money I had saved for a rainy day. Well, it was storming now. "Buy it," I said. "Buy it all. Use the shell company we set up. Nemesis LLC. Saul nodded, tucking the check into his jacket. "By 5 p.m. today, Nemesis LLC will be the primary lien holder on Bradley's business, his car, and his personal condo. Technically, Ike, you will be his landlord, his bank, and his executioner." "Good," I said. "If he misses a single payment, which we know he will because he is broke, I want you to call the loan, foreclose on everything. Freeze his accounts. I want him to go to the ATM tomorrow and find out he can't even buy a stick of gum." I left Saul and drove back to the house. I felt lighter. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the CEO of his destruction. When I walked into the kitchen, the house smelled of lavender and bleach. Loretta was scrubbing the countertops. She scrubbed when she was anxious, and she was very anxious. She turned when she heard me. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe. She was looking for signs of the dementia she had been cultivating. She was looking for the tremor, the confusion, the slump in my shoulders. But I had made a mistake. In my excitement over the deal with Saul, I had walked in with my back straight. My eyes were clear. I wasn't shaking. "Ike," she said, her voice sharp. "You look awake." I quickly caught myself. I let my shoulders drop. I rubbed my temple, feigning a headache. I don't know, Loretta," I mumbled. "I feel strange. My heart is racing. Is it time for my medicine?" I watched her eyes narrow. She wasn't buying it, not completely. For months, the poison had kept me in a fog. But since I had stopped taking the blue pills and the special smoothies 3 days ago, my body was fighting back. My liver was clearing the toxins. The strength of the bricklayer was returning. Loretta dried her hands on a dish towel. She walked over to me, invading my personal space. She reached up and touched my forehead. Her hand was cold. "You feel warm," she said. "And you aren't shaking, Ike. Look at your hands." I looked down. My hands were steady at my sides. I tried to force a tremor, but it looked fake. I knew it, and she knew it. I must be having a good day. I lied. The doctor said I would have good days. Loretta didn't smile. A good day for me was a bad day for her. A good day meant I could read contracts. A good day meant I could ask questions. A good day meant she wasn't in control. "You need to rest," she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous maternal tone. "The excitement of the fishing trip was too much for you. Your body is flooding with adrenaline. That's why you aren't shaking. But the crash is coming, Ike, and it will be bad." She turned back to the counter. I saw her open the cabinet where she kept her spices, but she didn't reach for the oregano. She reached for a small, unmarked glass vial hidden behind the flower jar. "I need to make you a special tea," she said, "an herbal blend, to calm your nerves. We can't have you having a stroke before the hearing tomorrow." I watched her reflection in the microwave door. She wasn't measuring a teaspoon. She was pouring. She was dumping powder into the kettle with a recklessness I hadn't seen before. She was doubling the dose. No, she was tripling it. She was panic-stricken. Bradley must have called her. He must have told her that I threatened him on the boat, even if he spun it as a delusion. She realized that I was becoming dangerous. The slow kill was taking too long. She needed to knock me out now. I stood there watching my wife prepare a cup of execution. I realized then that the game had shifted. I had the legal upper hand with Bradley's debt, but physically I was in the most danger I had ever been in. If I drank that tea, I wouldn't wake up for the hearing. I might not wake up at all. But if I refused it, she would know I knew. And then what? Would she call Bradley to come finish the job with a pillow? Would she push me down the stairs herself? I had to be smarter. "That smells good, Loretta," I said, trying to sound eager. "Is it the peppermint one?" "Yes," she said, stirring the dark liquid. "Peppermint and valerian root for sleep." She turned around and held the cup out to me. Steam rose from the surface, carrying a faint, bitter chemical smell that cut through the peppermint. "Drink it all, Ike. Right here, so I can wash the cup." She was standing between me and the sink. She was standing between me and the door. She wasn't going to let me pour this one into a napkin. I took the cup. It was hot. I looked at the dark liquid. "I need to use the restroom first," I said. "My bladder, you know." Loretta blocked my path. "Drink it first, Ike. Then go. I don't want you spilling it on the rug." She was pushing. She was desperate. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear for me, but fear of losing the house, the money, the lifestyle. I brought the cup to my lips. I tilted it. I let the hot liquid touch my tongue. It burned. Then I let my hand spasm. I jerked my arm violently as if a massive tremor had just hit me. I threw the cup sideways. The hot tea splashed all over Loretta's white apron and down the front of the cabinets. The cup shattered on the tile floor, exploding into 100 ceramic shards. "Oops," I cried out, stepping back. "Oh no, my hand. It jumped," Loretta screamed. The hot tea had scalded her arm. "You clumsy old fool," she yelled, her mask slipping completely. "Look what you did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," I wailed, dropping to my knees and trying to pick up the sharp pieces of the cup with my bare hands. I cut my finger on purpose. "A little blood to sell the act. I'm just so useless," I cried. "I can't even hold a cup." Loretta stood there breathing hard, clutching her burned arm. She looked down at me, scrambling on the floor like a broken child. The anger in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by that cold, pitying satisfaction. "See," she said more to herself than to me. "The crash. I told you it was coming. You are deteriorating, Ike. You are a mess." She stepped over me, not caring that I was bleeding. "Leave it," she commanded. "You'll just cut yourself more. Go to your room. I'll make another one. And this time I'm going to use a sippy cup, like a baby. Because that's what you are now. A giant, useless baby." I scrambled up and ran to my room, clutching my bleeding finger. I slammed the door and leaned against it. My heart was pounding. I had bought myself an hour, maybe 2, but she was going to come back. And she was going to force that poison down my throat if she had to hold my nose shut to do it. I looked at the clock. It was 4 p.m. Saul should be closing the deal on Bradley's debt right now. I needed to get out of the house. But I couldn't leave. If I left, they would call the police and report a missing, vulnerable adult. They would have the silver alert out in an hour. No, I had to stay. I had to endure. I went to the bathroom and wrapped my finger in toilet paper. I looked at myself in the mirror. "Hold on, Ike," I whispered. "Just one more night." Tomorrow morning was the hearing. Tomorrow morning the trap would snap shut. But first I had to survive dinner. And I had a feeling that tonight Loretta wasn't going to serve roast beef. She was going to serve an ultimatum. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Dante. "Transaction complete. You own the debt." And I sent a little gift to Bradley's email. "Check your bug." I smiled. I put my earbud in. I heard Bradley's car screech into the driveway downstairs. I heard the front door slam. "Loretta," he screamed, his voice cracking with panic. "Loretta, where are you?" I heard running footsteps. What? Loretta yelled back. "What is it now?" "My accounts," Bradley shrieked. "They're frozen. I went to buy gas and the card was declined. I called the bank. They said there is a lien, a total freeze." "What?" Loretta gasped. Who put a lien on it?" Bradley's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "A company called Nemesis LLC. They bought my debt, Loretta. All of it. They called the loan. They want $2 million by midnight or they seize everything. The house, the car, the business, everything." I stood in my bedroom listening to their world collapse. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to dance. But I just sat down on the edge of the bed and waited, because a cornered rat is dangerous. but a broke-cornered rat with a cartel deadline. That is a suicide bomber. The night was just getting started, and I was ready for the fireworks. They say the sharpest knife is the one that comes from your own kitchen, but I disagree. The sharpest knife is the one you sharpened yourself, the one you held in your hands for 30 years, the one you polished and protected, only to have it plunged into your back. That knife was my daughter Keisha. I had spent the last 48 hours dismantling Bradley's life. I had frozen his accounts. I had bought his debt. I had exposed his cartel connections to the FBI through Dante. I was systematically destroying the man who wanted me dead. But there was one variable I couldn't account for, one blind spot in my vision, my little girl, Keisha. I remembered the day she was born. I held her in my rough cement-stained hands and promised God that I would build a world where she would never have to lift a finger. I gave her everything: private schools, ballet lessons, a paid-for-college degree, a down payment on her first house. I thought I was giving her a good life. I didn't realize I was crippling her. I didn't realize I was raising a woman so dependent on comfort that she would trade her father's life to keep her heated swimming pool. It was Tuesday evening. The house was vibrating with tension. Bradley was locked in his study, screaming into his phone, trying to find out who Nemesis LLC was. Loretta was in the kitchen, furiously chopping vegetables with a butcher knife, her eyes manic. I found Keisha sitting on the back porch swing. It was the same swing I had built for her 16th birthday. She was staring out at the garden, a glass of white wine in her hand. Her hand was shaking. She looked terrified. I opened the sliding glass door and stepped out. The air was thick and humid, a storm brewing in the distance. Keisha jumped when she saw me. She quickly wiped a tear from her cheek. "Daddy," she said, her voice high and tight. "You startled me. You should be in bed resting. Tomorrow is a big day." She meant the competency hearing, the day they were going to lock me away. I sat down next to her on the swing. The chains creaked under my weight. I didn't play the senile old man. Not this time. I needed her to see me. I needed her to see her father. "I'm not tired, Keisha," I said softly. "My mind is clear tonight." She looked at me, searching my face. She saw the clarity in my eyes. She saw the strength in my jaw. For a second, she looked relieved. "Daddy," she whispered. You sound like yourself." "I am myself, baby girl," I said. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold and clammy. "I need to ask you something, Keisha, and I need you to tell me the truth. Not the truth you tell your husband, not the truth you tell your mother. The truth you tell your daddy." She pulled her hand away slightly, but I held on. "Are you happy?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. She blinked rapidly. "Happy. Of course I'm happy. Bradley is a good provider. We have a nice life." I looked at the bruise on her wrist that she was trying to hide with her bracelet. I looked at the fear in her eyes every time Bradley's voice boomed from inside the house. "He's a provider," I said. "But is he a good man?" Keisha looked down at her lap. "He's under a lot of stress, Dad. You don't understand business. The market is tough. I understand business," I said, my voice hardening. "I built a company from a wheelbarrow and a shovel. I know the difference between stress and desperation. I know the difference between a bad market and a bad man." I leaned in closer. "I know about the pills, Keisha." She froze. Her breath hitched in her throat. She didn't look up. "I know about the blue pills," I continued. "I know about the smoothies. I know that your husband and your mother have been feeding me poison for 6 months. She started to cry, silent, racking sobs that shook her shoulders. "Daddy, no," she whimpered. It's not poison. It's medicine. They said it was to help you, to calm you down." "It's neurotoxin, Keisha," I said. "It's meant to kill me, or make me look crazy enough to lock away so Bradley can sell the warehouse to pay off the drug dealers he stole from." She gasped. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were wide with horror. She knew. She knew about the debt. She knew about the danger. "He's in trouble, Daddy," she sobbed. "Bad people are after him. They threatened us. They said if he doesn't pay, they will hurt me. They will hurt Mom. So the solution is to kill me," I asked. "To sacrifice your father." She didn't answer. Her silence was a knife twisting in my gut. I took a deep breath. This was it, the final lifeline. It's not too late, Keisha. I have money. Money Bradley doesn't know about. I moved the assets into a trust. He can't touch them. But I can. I can get you out. I can send you to Europe. I can hire security. We can put Bradley in jail where he belongs, and we can start over. Just you and me. I squeezed her hand. Choose me, Keisha. Choose your father. Walk out of this house with me right now. We will get in my truck and we won't look back. She looked at me. I saw the conflict in her eyes. I saw the little girl who used to sit on my lap. I saw the woman who was terrified of her husband. For a moment, a brief shining moment, I thought she was going to say yes. She squeezed my hand back. Daddy, she whispered. I love you. I love you too, baby. Let's go. She stood up. She wiped her face. I need to get my purse, she said. And my coat. Wait here. I'll be right back. I nodded, tears stinging my own eyes. I had saved her. I had lost my wife. I had lost my friend. But I had saved my daughter. She walked back into the house. I watched her through the glass. She walked toward the front hall, toward the coat rack. But then she turned left, toward the study, toward Bradley. My heart stopped. I reached into my pocket and put the earbud in. I tapped the app on my phone. Audio detected. Study. I heard the door open. I heard Bradley's voice, angry and slurred. He was drinking. What do you want, Keisha? Get out. I'm thinking. Bradley, you have to listen to me. Keisha's voice came through the earpiece. It wasn't the voice of the scared girl on the porch. It was urgent, panic-stricken. What? He knows, Bradley. He knows everything. I felt the blood drain from my face. I sat on the swing, paralyzed, listening to my own execution. What are you talking about? Bradley snapped. Dad, Keisha hissed. He's not senile. He just told me. He knows about the pills. He called it neurotoxin. And he knows about the debt. He knows about the bad men. There was a silence on the line. Then the sound of a chair scraping back. He told you that Bradley asked. Yes, and he said he moved the money. He said he put the assets in a trust. He said you can't touch them. She was giving him the road map. She was handing him the keys to destroy me. He offered to take me away. Keisha continued, her voice rising. He wanted me to leave with him right now. He's going to go to the police, Bradley. He's going to put you in jail. Why are you telling me this? Bradley asked, his voice low and dangerous. Why didn't you go with him? Because he's old. Bradley, Keisha screamed. He's going to die anyway. And if he goes to the police, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the status. I can't be poor Bradley. I can't go back to being a construction worker's daughter. I won't do it. I closed my eyes. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It felt like acid. She didn't choose him because she loved him. She chose him because she loved the money. She loved the lifestyle I had bought her more than she loved the man who earned it. You have to do something, Bradley, Keisha urged. You can't wait for the hearing tomorrow. If he controls the trust, the hearing won't matter. You have to make him sign the release tonight. Or what Bradley asked. Or you have to make sure he can't testify. Keisha whispered. Do whatever you have to do. Just get the money. The line went dead. Or maybe I just stopped listening. I took the earbud out. I looked at the garden. The flowers Loretta loved so much. The swing I built with my own hands. It was all a lie. All of it. I wasn't a father. I was a bank. And now that the ATM was threatening to close, the customers were rioting. I didn't feel anger anymore. Anger is hot. This was cold. This was the absolute zero of the soul. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. I opened the app for the trust Saul and I had set up. I went to the beneficiary tab. Primary beneficiary Keisha Turner Vance. I tapped the edit button. My finger hovered over her name. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike. I remembered walking her down the aisle, handing her to Bradley, thinking I was giving her to a man who would protect her. I was wrong. I raised a snake who mated with a viper. I pressed delete. Her name vanished. I typed in a new beneficiary. The Marcus Robinson Foundation for Elder Justice. I hit save. It was done. With one click, Keisha was no longer an heiress. She was just the wife of a broke money launderer. She would inherit nothing. Not the house, not the warehouse, not a single dime of the empire I built. I put the phone away. I stood up. I walked to the sliding glass door. I saw Keisha coming back from the hallway. She had her purse. She was putting on a coat. She was putting her mask back on, preparing to come out and lie to my face again. I didn't wait for her. I turned and walked toward the side gate. I wasn't going to run away with her. And I wasn't going to wait for Bradley to come out with a gun. I was going to the one place they wouldn't follow me. I was going to the warehouse. My fortress. I checked my pocket. I had the gun. I had the bug. And I had the truth. The family man died on that porch swing. The man who walked out of the gate was a soldier, and the war had just begun. Keisha wanted me to leave fine. I was leaving, but I was leaving her to the wolves she insisted on feeding. God help her, because I wouldn't, not anymore. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and old lies. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded calmly on the heavy oak surface. To my right sat my attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, whom Saul had retained for this specific battle. She told me to say nothing. She told me to be a statue. If I frowned, I was aggressive. If I smiled, I was senile. If I cried, I was unstable. So I sat there, a 71-year-old black man, in a room full of people deciding if I was still allowed to be a person. Across the aisle sat the family I had built. Loretta was wearing a charcoal gray dress that I had never seen before. It was modest, frumpy, even. She wasn't wearing her diamonds. She wasn't wearing the gold watch I gave her for our 40th anniversary. She looked small. She looked frail. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the heartbroken wife to perfection. Next to her was Bradley. He was wearing a navy blue suit, the kind you wear to a funeral. He had a bandage on his hand, a nice little prop to suggest he had been trying to restrain a violent invalid. He wouldn't look at me. He kept whispering to their lawyer, a man with a slicked-back haircut and a smile that looked like a razor blade. And behind them in the gallery sat Keisha, my daughter. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. She was hiding. Good. She should hide. All rise, the bailiff bellowed. Judge Hamilton walked in. He was a man my age with thinning white hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. I knew Judge Hamilton. I had donated to his re-election campaign 5 years ago. I wondered if he remembered the man who wrote the check, or if he only saw the file on his desk that said incompetent. The hearing began with the efficiency of a slaughterhouse. Bradley's lawyer stood up. He didn't shout. He spoke in a low, regretful tone as if he were apologizing for what he had to do. Your Honor, he began, smoothing his tie. We are here today with heavy hearts. This is not a petition the family files lightly. Mr. Bradley Vance and Mrs. Loretta Turner love Isaiah Turner deeply. He is the patriarch of their family, but in recent months his decline has been rapid and terrifying. He walked toward the judge, holding up a thick stack of papers. We have submitted an affidavit from Dr. Arthur Evans, a respected neurologist who examined Mr. Turner just yesterday. The diagnosis is clear: advanced vascular dementia with paranoid delusions and aggressive outbursts. Dr. Evans notes that Mr. Turner could not identify the current year, could not name the president, and shockingly confused his own son-in-law with a deceased family pet. I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. I wanted to stand up and scream that I was acting. I wanted to tell the judge that I knew exactly who the president was. But Sarah placed a hand on my forearm. Her grip was firm. Wait, her touch said. The lawyer continued, but it is not just confusion, Your Honor. If it were only memory loss, the family would care for him at home. But Mr. Turner has become violent. He is a danger to himself and others. Objection, Sarah said, standing up halfway. These are allegations without proof. The opposing lawyer smiled. We have proof, Your Honor. He pulled a thumb drive from his pocket. My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. Yesterday morning, in a delusional rage, Mr. Turner demanded to be taken fishing, the lawyer narrated. Mr. Vance, fearing for his father-in-law's safety, agreed to take him to calm him down. On that boat in the middle of the lake, Mr. Turner pulled a loaded .35-7 Magnum revolver on Mr. Vance. A gasp went through the courtroom. The stenographer looked up, eyes wide. Judge Hamilton frowned, peering over his reading glasses at me. We have video evidence, the lawyer said. Mr. Vance was recording the trip because he wanted to capture a memory of his father-in-law. Instead, he captured a nightmare. He plugged the drive into the court's AV system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. There I was. The camera angle was low, propped up against a tackle box, looking up at me. The image was shaky, rocking with the boat. But the audio had been doctored. On the screen, I was holding the massive chrome gun. I was pointing it at the camera. My voice boomed out of the speakers. Sharks are the only creatures that eat their own kind. I see the blood, Bradley. I should kill you right here. Then the video cut. It cut out the part where Bradley threatened me with the wrench. It cut out the part where he admitted to the debt. It cut out the part where I lowered the gun and spared his life. In the edited clip, I looked like a monster. I looked like a cold-blooded killer rambling about sharks and blood, waving a hand cannon at a terrified man. The lawyer paused the video right on the frame where the barrel of the gun was pointed directly at the lens. "Your Honor," he said softly, "this man is armed. He is paranoid. He believes his family are sharks trying to eat him. He is living in a hallucination. Yesterday he almost killed his son-in-law. Tonight it could be his wife. We are asking for immediate emergency conservatorship to place Mr. Turner in a secure facility where he can receive the psychiatric help he desperately needs, and to freeze his assets so he cannot use his considerable wealth to purchase more weapons or harm himself." Judge Hamilton stared at the freeze frame of my face. He looked at the gun. Then he looked at me. "Mr. Turner," the judge said, his voice stern, "do you own a Colt Python revolver?" I stood up slowly. "Yes, Your Honor, since 1975. And did you point it at Mr. Vance yesterday?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, Your Honor. But," the judge held up a hand, "that is enough." He turned to Bradley's lawyer. "This is highly disturbing. I have seen dementia cases before, but the combination of access to firearms and this level of aggression is a recipe for tragedy." He picked up his pen. He hovered over the order. I looked at Loretta. She had her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking. But through the gaps in her fingers, I saw her watching the judge's pen. She wasn't crying. She was waiting for the ink to hit the paper. Once he signed that order, I was done. They would have the legal authority to drag me out of this courtroom in handcuffs and sedate me. They would have the authority to liquidate my assets. Bradley was biting his lip, trying to look nervous, but his leg was bouncing with adrenaline. He was seconds away from getting away with murder, Your Honor, Sarah said, standing up fully now. "Before you rule, the defense would like to present our own evidence." Judge Hamilton sighed, looking at the clock. "Counsel, the evidence is pretty damning. We have a medical diagnosis and video of an assault with a deadly weapon. Unless you have a psychiatric evaluation that contradicts Dr. Evans, I don't see what there is to discuss. We need to prioritize safety here." "We do not have a psychiatric evaluation," Sarah said calmly. "Then sit down, counsel," the judge snapped. But Sarah continued, her voice rising just enough to cut through the judge's impatience. "We do have something better. We have the rest of the video, and we have the audio from the dining room table where the plaintiffs planned this entire charade." Bradley stopped bouncing his leg. Loretta's hands froze on her face. The air in the courtroom changed instantly. It went from the stale boredom of procedure to the electric charge of a lightning strike. "What are you talking about?" the opposing lawyer demanded. "That video is the raw file." "It is not," Sarah said. She picked up her own laptop and walked to the podium. "And Dr. Evans' diagnosis. We have the raw audio of how that was obtained too, specifically the part where Mr. Vance instructs his mother-in-law to increase the dosage of the neurotoxin they have been feeding Mr. Turner for 6 months. Judge Hamilton dropped his pen. It clattered loudly on the bench. "Neurotoxin?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah said. She looked at me and gave a small, sharp nod. "It was time, Mr. Turner is not senile," Sarah declared, plugging in her laptop. "He is the victim of attempted murder, and the people sitting across the aisle aren't concerned family members. They are co-conspirators in a scheme to wash money for a cartel using this court as their laundry machine." Bradley stood up, his face red. "This is outrageous. This is slander. He's crazy. Don't listen to him. Sit down, Mr. Vance." Judge Hamilton bellowed, slamming his gavel. "Sarah, show me what you have," the judge commanded. Sarah clicked the mouse. The screen changed. It wasn't the boat video yet. It was the security footage from my living room captured by the camera I had installed the same day I planted the bugs. It showed Loretta standing in the kitchen. It showed her taking the vial. It showed her pouring the powder. It showed her saying, "We will increase it tonight. 1.5 times. That should be enough to make him compliant." Loretta gasped. A sound of pure, strangled horror. She slumped back in her chair, looking like she might faint for real this time. Then Sarah played the audio from the park, the audio where Bradley screamed about the deadline, where he screamed about the investors, where he said, "If he doesn't sign, we use the dementia defense." The courtroom was dead silent. The stenographer had stopped typing. The bailiff had moved his hand to his taser. Finally, Sarah played the boat video. The full version. The court heard Bradley threaten to bash my head in with a wrench. They heard him begging for his life. They heard him admit to the debt. When the video ended, Judge Hamilton slowly took off his glasses. He cleaned them with a slow, deliberate motion. He put them back on. He looked at Bradley. Then he looked at Loretta. His face was no longer granite. It was fire. "Mr. Vance," Mrs. Turner, the judge, said, his voice dangerously low. "I suggest you don't leave this building. Bailiff, bar the doors." Bradley bolted. He didn't think. He just reacted. He scrambled over the railing, knocking over his chair. He ran toward the double doors at the back of the courtroom. "Stop him!" the judge shouted. The bailiff moved, but Bradley was fast. He hit the doors running, but the doors didn't open. They were locked from the outside. Bradley slammed into the wood. He frantically pulled at the handles, and then the doors opened slowly. Standing there wasn't the bailiff. It was two agents in windbreakers with the letters FBI printed in bold yellow across the chest, and behind them, looking smug and tired, was Dante. Bradley stumbled back, his face white as a sheet. "Bradley Vance," the lead agent asked. Bradley couldn't speak. He just nodded. "You are under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder," the agent said. He slapped the cuffs on Bradley right there in the doorway. I stayed in my seat. I watched my son-in-law get dragged away. I watched Loretta being read her rights by the bailiff. She looked at me one last time. She mouthed the word, "Please." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 40 years. I raised my hand, my steady, strong hand, and I pointed to the door. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Turner," he said, "it appears the petition for guardianship is denied, and I apologize." I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. "No need to apologize, Your Honor," I said, my voice ringing clear and true in the silence. "I just came to get my life back." I walked out of the courtroom. I walked past Keisha, who was weeping in the back row. I didn't stop. I had won the legal battle. But the war wasn't over. There was one more thing I had to do. I had to face the fallout, and I had to bury the man I used to be. The sound of the judge's pen scratching against the paper sounded like a shovel hitting dirt. It was the sound of my grave being dug. Judge Hamilton had the order for emergency guardianship right in front of him. He had uncapped his fountain pen. The ink was wet on the nib. One signature. That was all it took to turn a free man into a prisoner. One signature to strip me of my rights, my home, and my voice. Bradley was vibrating in his seat next to me. I could feel the heat of his excitement. He wasn't looking at the judge. He was looking at his phone, probably checking the time, calculating how long it would take to drive from the courthouse to the bank to sell my warehouse. Loretta had a tissue pressed to her eyes, but I saw her shoulders relax. She thought the performance was over. She thought the curtain was coming down. "Your Honor, wait." The voice didn't come from me. It came from Sarah, my attorney. She didn't shout. She didn't slam her hand on the table. She stood up with the slow, terrifying grace of a predator that has just decided to stop playing with its food. Judge Hamilton paused. The pen hovered a millimeter above the paper. He looked up over his spectacles, annoyed. "Ms. Jenkins," he sighed, "we have been over this. Unless you have a medical counter-evaluation, I am signing this order. The safety of the ward is paramount." "We do not have a medical evaluation," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear in the silent courtroom. "We don't need one, because my client isn't sick." "Your Honor, he is being hunted." The opposing lawyer jumped up. "Objection! This is ridiculous theatrics." "Mr. Turner is clearly—" "Sit down," Sarah snapped. It wasn't a request. It was a command. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, before you sign away a man's life based on the testimony of these two heartbroken family members, I ask you to watch one more video. It is not from a shaky cell phone on a boat. It is from the high-definition security system installed in the Turner residence. A system Mr. Vance and Mrs. Turner didn't know existed." Bradley froze. His head snapped up. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like a corpse. Loretta lowered the tissue. Her eyes were wide, darting around the room as if looking for an exit. Judge Hamilton capped his pen. He sat back in his chair. "Show me," he said. Sarah connected her laptop to the court display. The large monitor on the wall flickered. The courtroom saw my kitchen. It was dated 3 days ago. The timestamp was 4:30 in the afternoon. There was Loretta. The picture was crystal clear. She was standing at the counter. She looked over her shoulder, checking the door. The expression on her face wasn't the loving wife. It was cold. Calculation. She opened the cabinet. She reached behind the flour jar and pulled out a small glass vial. It wasn't labeled. The courtroom watched in silence as she poured a white powder into my tea. Not a pinch, a heap. Then Sarah clicked a file. Audio filled the room. It was crystal clear. "We will increase it tonight," Loretta's voice echoed from the speakers. 1.5 times. That should be enough to make him compliant but keep him breathing. Then Bradley's voice answered. "And if that doesn't work, then we call Dr. Evans." Loretta's voice replied. "We get him committed. An emergency competency hearing. If the doctor testifies, we won't need his signature. We'll just need a judge's stamp." The audio ended. The silence that followed was heavier than the one before. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. Judge Hamilton stared at the screen. Then he slowly turned his head. He looked at the family table. Loretta was shaking. But it wasn't the fake tremble of a sad wife. It was the violent shudder of a trapped animal. She tried to stand up, but her legs gave out and she collapsed back into her chair. Bradley was paralyzed. He was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. He looked at the judge, then at me. It's out of context," Bradley stammered. His voice was a squeak. That was sugar. We were talking about his sugar intake." Sarah didn't even look at him. She played the next clip. It was the audio from the park, the bug under the dining room table. "He needs to be handled." Bradley's voice sneered through the speakers. "I promised the investors the deed by Wednesday. If he doesn't sign, I am finished. I don't care if he dies, Loretta. I just care about the audit." Bradley stopped talking. He slumped in his chair, defeated. There was no spinning that. There was no context that made "I don't care if he dies" sound like love. Judge Hamilton stood up. He picked up the order for guardianship. He ripped it in half. The sound of the tearing paper was the loudest thing in the world. He threw the pieces onto the floor. He looked at Bradley's lawyer. "Counsel, did you know about this?" The lawyer was already packing his briefcase, his face pale. "No, Your Honor. Absolutely not. I moved to withdraw as counsel immediately. I was deceived by my clients." Granted, the judge barked. "Get out." The lawyer fled. He didn't look back. Judge Hamilton leaned over the bench. His face was red with a fury that made the bailiff take a step back. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Turner, in 30 years on the bench I have never seen such a grotesque abuse of this court. You came here asking me to protect a vulnerable elder while you were actively poisoning him to steal his assets." He looked at the bailiff. "Bailiff, take these two into custody immediately. I am holding them in contempt of court, and I am referring this entire file to the district attorney's office for charges of attempted murder, fraud, and perjury." The bailiff unhooked his handcuffs. He started walking toward the table. Loretta started screaming. Not a scream of sorrow, a scream of rage. It was his idea, she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Bradley. "He made me do it. He owes money to bad people. He said they would kill us. I just wanted to save the house." "Shut up," Loretta Bradley yelled, pushing her away. I sat there watching them turn on each other. It was pathetic. It was ugly. It was satisfying. But it wasn't enough. If they were arrested now, they would go to a holding cell. They would call a bondsman. They would use the money they still thought they had access to. They would be out on bail by dinner. They would go back to my house. They would try to run. And more importantly, they would still think they had a chance. They didn't know about the trust. They didn't know I had bought the debt. They didn't know they were broke. I wanted them to know. I wanted them to feel the poverty they were so afraid of. "Your Honor," I said, standing up. Judge Hamilton looked at me. His expression softened. "Mr. Turner, I am so sorry. The court owes you a profound apology. You are safe now." "I know, Your Honor," I said, "but I have a request." "Anything the judge said. Don't arrest them yet." The judge blinked. "Excuse me." Sarah looked at me surprised. She touched my arm. "Ike, what are you doing?" I looked at Bradley. I saw the glimmer of hope in his eyes. He thought I was going to show mercy. He thought the big guy was going to save him one last time. "Your Honor." I said, my voice steady. If you arrest them now, they will make bail. They will drag this out for years. They will claim they were coerced. They will claim I made the tapes up. I looked at the judge. Let me handle my family, Your Honor. Dismiss the petition. Issue a restraining order if you must, but let them walk out of here. Why, the judge asked, bewildered. Why would you want that? Because I said, staring directly at Bradley, I want them to go home. I want them to see what is waiting for them. I want them to have one last night of freedom to think about what they did. I leaned forward. The police can pick them up tomorrow. I promise you they won't run. They have nowhere to go. The judge studied my face. He saw something there. Maybe he saw the soldier in me. Maybe he saw a man who needed to close his own wound. He nodded slowly. Very well, Mr. Turner. I will dismiss the case with prejudice. I will issue a temporary restraining order barring them from coming within 500 feet of you or your properties effective immediately. But I am still forwarding this file to the DA. It will take 24 hours to process the warrants. That is all I need, I said. The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. Mr. Vance, Mrs. Turner, you are free to go. But I suggest you use this time to find a very good criminal defense attorney. And God have mercy on your souls, because this court certainly won't. The bailiff stepped back. Bradley and Loretta stood up. They were shaking. They looked at me. Loretta opened her mouth to speak, maybe to beg, maybe to apologize. I didn't look at her. I turned my back. Sarah gathered her papers. She leaned in close to me. You are playing a dangerous game, Ike, she whispered. Why give them a head start? I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in months. I'm not giving them a head start, Sarah. I'm giving them a rope. Bradley and Loretta scrambled out of the courtroom like rats fleeing a sinking ship. They didn't look back. They ran for the elevators. I knew exactly where they were going. They were going to the bank. They were going to try and drain the accounts before the restraining order froze them. They were going to run right into the wall I had built. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright afternoon sun. The air tasted sweet. I took out my phone and called Dante. They are out, I said. I know, Dante replied. I'm tracking their phones. They are heading straight to the First National Bank on Peachtree Street. Perfect, I said. Is the trap set? The trap is set, Dante said. The accounts are zeroed out. The cards are canceled, and the notification for the warehouse sale I set it to trigger the moment Bradley tries to access the funds. Good, I said. I walked to my truck. I wasn't going home. I had one more stop to make. I was going to plan a party. My birthday was in 2 days. Bradley and Loretta wouldn't be invited, but they would be the main attraction. I sat in the truck for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. I thought about the look on Loretta's face when the video played. The betrayal. It hurt. God, it hurt. But the pain was different now. It wasn't the dull ache of confusion. It was the sharp, clean pain of surgery. I was cutting out the rot. I started the engine. Run, Bradley, I whispered to the windshield. Run as fast as you can. You're just running on a treadmill, and I'm about to pull the plug. 72. That is a lot of candles to blow out, especially when the people standing around the cake have spent the last 6 months trying to extinguish your life. But here I was standing in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first car, surrounded by 300 of Atlanta's elite. I had rented the ballroom myself, I had sent out the invitations, and I had made sure that every single person who mattered to Bradley Vance was in that room. The bankers he was trying to impress, the real estate developers he was trying to con, and most importantly, the quiet men in dark suits standing near the bar, the investors from the shadow world who were waiting for their money. Bradley and Loretta were there too. They had to be. Even though the judge had granted a restraining order yesterday, I had sent a personal waiver through Sarah this morning. I invited them. I told them that if they didn't come, if they didn't play the part of the happy family one last time, I would release the tapes to the 6 o'clock news. They were trapped. If they didn't show up, the investors would get suspicious. If they did show up, they were walking into the lion's den. They chose the den. I watched them from the balcony as the jazz band played a soft, upbeat tune. They looked like ghosts haunting their own funeral. Loretta was wearing a smile that looked like it was stapled onto her face. She was gripping a glass of champagne with both hands to hide the shaking. She greeted guests, laughed at their jokes, and accepted compliments about her wonderful husband, but her eyes were dead. Every time the door opened, she flinched, expecting the police to march in. Bradley was worse. He was sweating through his silk shirt. He was bouncing from group to group, talking fast, laughing too loud, clapping men on the back with a desperate energy. He was trying to project success. He was trying to show the men in the dark suits that everything was under control, that the warehouse deal was closed, that the money was coming. He didn't know that the warehouse deal had bounced. He didn't know that his accounts were frozen. He didn't know that I owned his debt. He thought he was just surviving a family spat. He thought he could still charm his way out of this. I walked down the grand staircase. The room went quiet. Heads turned. The crazy old man had arrived. But I didn't look crazy tonight. I walked with the stride of a general inspecting his troops. "Ike, you look magnificent," a woman called out. I smiled and waved. "Thank you, Martha. I feel magnificent." Bradley saw me coming. He froze. For a second I saw the urge to run flash across his face. But then he saw the man from the cartel watching him from the corner, sipping sparkling water with the cold indifference of a reptile. Bradley swallowed hard. He fixed his tie and walked toward me. "Happy birthday, big guy," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. He reached out to hug me. I let him. I let him wrap his arms around me. I could smell the scotch on his breath. I could feel his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. I leaned close to his ear. "Enjoy the cake, Bradley," I whispered. "It's the last expensive thing you will ever eat." He pulled back his eyes wide with terror, but before he could speak I turned to the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," I boomed. "Please drink up. The bar is open." The crowd cheered. Bradley stood there paralyzed, a man standing on a trap door waiting for the lever to be pulled. Loretta sidled up to me. She linked her arm through mine. Her grip was painful. "Why are you doing this, Ike?" she hissed through her teeth while smiling at the mayor's wife. "Why drag this out? Just let us go." I looked at her. I looked at the diamonds in her ears. Diamonds. I had bought her. I looked at the dress bought with money from the company I built. "I am letting you go, Loretta," I said pleasantly. "I'm letting you go in style." The night wore on. I watched Bradley work the room. He was trying to close deals. I saw him pull a developer aside, whispering frantically, showing him something on his phone. He was trying to secure a bridge loan. He was trying to find cash, any cash, to pay off the cartel before midnight. I signaled the waiter. It was time. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The jazz band stopped playing. A single spotlight cut through the darkness and found me at the center of the stage. I tapped the microphone. The sound echoed through the cavernous room. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, and business associates." I looked directly at the men in the dark suits. They didn't blink. "Thank you for being here to celebrate my 72nd birthday. They say that with age comes wisdom, but I think for me age brought clarity." I paused. The room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. For the last 6 months I have been unwell, or so I was told. I was told I was forgetting things. I was told I was weak. I was told that I needed to step aside and let the younger generation take over. I looked down at Bradley and Loretta standing in the front row. They looked like they were facing a firing squad. "My son-in-law Bradley and my loving wife Loretta took such good care of me," I continued. "They managed my medicine. They managed my finances. They even tried to manage my future. They worked so hard to make sure I went to a better place." A few people chuckled, thinking I was making a joke about retirement. Bradley didn't chuckle. He wiped sweat from his upper lip. "But you know something happened this week," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I realized that I still have some fight left in me. I realized that the foundation of this family wasn't as strong as I thought. And when a foundation is rotten, you don't patch it up, you tear it down." I saw Loretta grab Bradley's hand. She was trembling. "Tonight isn't just about my birthday," I announced. "It's about business. It's about the future of the Turner legacy. And it's about paying debts." Bradley's head snapped up. That word triggered him. Debts. "I know many of you are here because you do business with Bradley," I said, gesturing to him. "Come up here, son. Come on up to the stage." The spotlight swung to Bradley. He blinked, blinded by the light. The crowd applauded politely. "Go on," someone whispered. Bradley hesitated. He looked at the cartel men. They were watching him with intense interest. If he refused, he looked weak. If he went up, he was walking into the unknown. He plastered a sick, crooked smile on his face and walked up the stairs. He stood next to me, sweating under the hot lights. "Give him a hand, folks," I said. "Ideally a hand that isn't shaking." Laughter. Bradley laughed too, but it sounded like a choke. Bradley has been very ambitious lately, I told the crowd. He has been working on a massive project, the ecological mall, a project that required a lot of capital, a lot of risk, and a lot of trust. I put my arm around his shoulder. I felt him flinch. He has been telling everyone that he is waiting for me to sign over the deed to my warehouse to fund this project. He has been telling his investors that the money is coming today. I felt Bradley stiffen. He turned to look at me, his eyes pleading, "Don't do this. Don't say I don't have the money." "Well, I have good news," I said. Bradley's eyes lit up. Hope. Pure, desperate hope. He thought I was going to save him. He thought I was going to announce the sale. I decided that for my birthday I didn't want gifts, I said. I wanted to give gifts. I wanted to give my son-in-law exactly what he deserves. I reached into my tuxedo pocket. Bradley held his breath. The room leaned in. I pulled out a thick envelope. It wasn't a deed. It was wrapped in a red ribbon. "Bradley," I said, my voice booming. "I know you have been under a lot of pressure. I know you have debts. I know there are people waiting for their money by midnight. I saw the cartel men straighten up. They were listening. So I decided to help you out," I said. "I decided to step in." I handed him the envelope. "Open it," I commanded. Bradley took the envelope. His hands were shaking so bad he could barely undo the ribbon. He tore it open. He pulled out the document inside. He looked at it. He squinted. Then his knees buckled. He grabbed the podium to stop himself from falling. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "Read it to the crowd, Bradley," I said into the microphone. "Tell them what I got you." He couldn't speak. He was hyperventilating. I took the paper from his hand. "He is a little overcome with emotion," I said to the crowd. "Let me read it for him." I held the document up to the light. "This is a purchase agreement." I read clearly, dated today, assigned to Nemesis LLC. I looked at the crowd. It seems Bradley here had a few outstanding loans, about $2 million worth, high interest, very nasty stuff. Well, as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, Nemesis LLC bought all of that debt. Every single penny. I turned to Bradley. "And guess who owns Nemesis LLC?" I smiled, a shark's smile. "I do." The room gasped. "Happy birthday, Bradley," I whispered into the mic loud enough for the back row to hear. "I am your new bank. I am your new landlord. And I am calling the loan." I dropped the paper at his feet. "I want full repayment by midnight," I said, checking my watch. "You have 3 hours. If not, I foreclose on your house, your car, your business, and I seize every asset you have to your name." I looked over at the cartel men. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at Bradley. And they looked hungry. Bradley looked at the men. He looked at the paper. He looked at me. You can't," he whispered, the microphone catching his sob. "I don't have it. You know I don't have it." "I know," I said, cold as ice. I turned back to the crowd. "Enjoy the cake, everyone. It's chocolate. Bitter. Just how I like it." I walked off the stage, leaving Bradley standing alone in the spotlight, holding a piece of paper that was essentially his death warrant. The music started again, but nobody was dancing. They were all watching the dead man walking. And I walked over to the bar, ordered a bourbon, neat, and watched the sharks begin to circle. The silence in the ballroom wasn't empty. It was heavy. It pressed down on everyone's shoulders like a wet wool blanket. 300 people stood frozen, their champagne glasses halfway to their mouths, staring at the stage where my son-in-law stood holding the paperwork that proved he was owned by the very man he had tried to bury. Bradley looked at the paper in his hand. He looked at it as if it were a foreign language, but I knew he understood every legal term printed there. He understood foreclosure, he understood immediate repayment, and he understood that he was broke. But he was a con man, and a con man never stops conning until the handcuffs are actually clicking shut. He looked up at the crowd. He forced a laugh. It sounded like a dry cough. This is a joke, folks," Bradley stammered, waving the paper dismissively. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You know, Ike, he loves a good prank. He's getting me back for the surprise party last year. It's a gag gift." He looked at the men in the dark suits near the bar, the cartel investors. He flashed them a desperate, pleading smile. Don't worry, gentlemen, the funds are secure. The transfer is happening tonight. This is just family humor. I stepped back up to the microphone. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. It's not a joke, Bradley. I said, my voice calm and amplified, filling every corner of the room. And I'm not finished. I clicked the remote control in my hand. The giant screen behind us changed. The logo of Bradley's real estate firm Vance Global Properties appeared on the screen. It was a flashy logo, gold and black, designed to look expensive and stable. Then a big red stamp appeared over it. Dissolved. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. You see, folks? I continued, leaning on the podium. When I bought Bradley's debt, I also bought the rights to his collateral. And since he used his company stock as collateral for those high-interest loans he took out to gamble with, I am now the majority shareholder of Vance Global Properties. I turned to Bradley. He was swaying on his feet. He looked like he was going to vomit right on my tuxedo shoes. And as the majority shareholder, I made an executive decision about an hour ago, I said. I held an emergency board meeting, just me and my lawyer, and we decided that the company lacks integrity. So we dissolved it. I pointed at the screen. As of 5 p.m. today, Vance Global Properties no longer exists. All assets have been frozen, all projects have been halted, and all employees have been terminated. I looked down at the front row where Bradley's secretary was standing. She gasped and covered her mouth. Sorry, Susan, I said gently. But don't worry, I'll make sure the severance packages come out of Bradley's personal trust before I liquidate it. Bradley let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. You can't do that, he shrieked, lunging toward the microphone. We have active contracts. We have the Ecological Mall project. That's a $100 million deal. You can't just shut it down. I stepped in front of him. I was bigger than him. I was stronger than him. And I had the truth on my side. The Ecological Mall, I repeated. Yes, let's talk about that. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. This time it wasn't a logo, it was a spreadsheet. A complex, detailed bank ledger. Dante had done his work well. The numbers were large enough for everyone in the back of the room to see. This is the internal ledger for the mall project, I explained to the hushed crowd. Bradley has been collecting investments for this project for 2 years. Many of you in this room wrote him checks. You, Mr. Henderson, you wrote a check for $50,000 last month. I pointed to a man in the third row. He nodded slowly, looking pale. And you gentlemen in the back, I said, nodding to the cartel men. You invested significantly more. Millions, in fact. Bradley was shaking his head violently. No, turn it off. Don't look at it. It's a mistake. It's hacked. I ignored him. Now look at column B, I said. That is the money coming in. Over $10 million collected for land acquisition and permits. I clicked the remote. Column C highlighted in bright red. And this is where the money went. The crowd gasped. It wasn't land, it wasn't permits, it wasn't concrete or steel. The line items were clear. DraftKings account $200,000, Porsche dealership $150,000, MGM Grand Casino Las Vegas $400,000, offshore transfer, Cayman Islands $3 million. And the list went on. Jewelers, 5-star hotels, private jets. There is no mall. I said, my voice cutting through the shock. There never was a mall. There is no land. There are no permits. I turned to Bradley. He had shrunk. He looked like a child caught stealing from the collection plate. It's a Ponzi scheme, I declared. He used new investors to pay the interest for the old investors, and he skimmed the rest to fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He built a castle on a sinkhole, and tonight the ground just opened up. The room erupted. It wasn't applause this time. It was a roar. The sound of betrayal. The sound of money burning. Mr. Henderson, the man who gave $50,000, pushed his way to the front. My money, he yelled, his face red. Where's my money? Bradley. Bradley backed away, holding his hands up. It's tied up. It's in escrow. Ike is lying. He's senile. He doesn't know how to read a ledger. But nobody was looking at me. They were looking at the screen. The numbers didn't lie. Then the movement started in the back of the room. The men in the dark suits. The dangerous ones. They didn't yell. They just started moving. They moved like a tide parting the crowd. People scrambled to get out of their way. They could smell the violence radiating off them. Bradley saw them coming. His eyes bulged. Security, he screamed, his voice cracking. Security, get them out. But the security guards, off-duty cops I had hired personally, didn't move. They stood by the doors, arms crossed. They worked for me tonight, and I hadn't given the order to protect the thief. Ike Bradley grabbed my arm. His grip was wet and desperate. "Ike, please stop them. They will kill me. You know they will kill me." I looked at his hand on my tuxedo sleeve. I carefully peeled his fingers off one by one. "You should have thought about that before you tried to poison my tea, Bradley," I said softly. I stepped back. I stepped away from the podium. I stepped out of the spotlight. This was his show now. The first investor reached the stage. He was a big man, a contractor I knew from the old days. He grabbed Bradley by the lapels of his $3,000 suit and dragged him down the stairs. "Where is it?" the man roared, shaking Bradley like a rag doll. "Where is my retirement fund? I... Bradley stammered, tears streaming down his face mixed with sweat. Then the cartel men arrived. They pushed the contractor aside. They didn't shout. One of them, a man with a scar running down his cheek, leaned in close to Bradley. He whispered something. I didn't hear it, but I saw Bradley's knees give out completely. He collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, curled into a fetal position. "Please," Bradley wailed. "I can get it. Give me a week. Just give me a week." "You don't have a week," the scarred man said. "You don't even have a minute." The chaos escalated. More investors surged forward. Drinks were thrown. A glass shattered near Bradley's head. He was trapped in a circle of angry, cheated, desperate people. I stood on the stage watching the destruction of the Golden Boy. It was brutal. It was ugly. But it was fair. Loretta was standing by the dessert table. She wasn't moving to help him. She was backing away inch by inch, trying to blend into the curtains. She watched her son-in-law, the man she had conspired with, being torn apart by the mob, and she didn't lift a finger. I walked over to the microphone one last time. "Attention," I said. The crowd quieted down slightly, looking up at me. Bradley was on the floor, bleeding from a cut on his lip, his expensive suit ripped. "I have called the police," I announced. "They are on their way to arrest Mr. Vance for fraud and embezzlement." I looked down at the cartel men. "I suggest that if anyone here has unfiled grievances, you might want to leave before the authorities arrive." The dark suits looked at me. The scarred man nodded. He understood. The game was over. The police meant exposure. They turned and walked out, leaving Bradley shivering on the floor. But the legitimate investors stayed. They surrounded him, shouting, demanding answers, taking photos of his disgrace. I walked down the stairs. I walked right past Bradley. He reached out and grabbed my pant leg. "Dad, please," he whimpered. I stopped. I looked down at him. "My name is Mr. Turner," I said, "and you are trespassing at my party." I kicked his hand away. Not hard, just enough to break the contact. I walked toward Loretta. She saw me coming. She froze. The crowd parted for me. They looked at me with fear, with respect. The crazy old man was gone. The Titan was back. I reached Loretta. She was trembling. "Ike," she whispered. "We need to leave. We need to go home. This is too much." "Home?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. I leaned in close to her so only she could hear. "Bradley just lost his company. He lost his investors. He lost his dignity. But you, Loretta, you are about to lose something much more personal." I gestured to the door where two uniformed officers were walking in, followed by a detective I recognized. "I told you I was giving you a gift," I said. "Bradley got his. Now it's your turn." Loretta turned pale. "What did you do?" she breathed. I smiled. "I gave the police the teacup, Loretta. The one I dropped in the kitchen. I kept the shards. And I gave them the lab report." Her eyes rolled back in her head. She swayed. "Happy birthday to me," I said. I turned and walked toward the bar. I needed a drink. The show was finally over, and the cleanup was just beginning. The ballroom was silent now. The music had stopped. The investors had left, taking their anger and their lawsuits with them. The police had dragged Bradley away in handcuffs. His expensive suit ruined his dignity, shredded. The waiters were clearing the tables, moving quietly, casting nervous glances at the stage where the drama had unfolded. But I wasn't watching the waiters. I was watching the woman standing by the service entrance. Loretta was trying to leave. She was trying to slip out the back door like a shadow, hoping that in the chaos of Bradley's destruction, I had forgotten about her. She had her purse clutched tight to her chest. She was shaking. She looked small. For 40 years she had been the giant in my life. She was the matriarch, the voice of reason, the rock. Now she looked like a thief caught in the beam of a flashlight. I walked across the dance floor. My footsteps echoed on the polished wood. Click, click, click. She heard me coming. She froze. She didn't turn around immediately. She just stopped, her hand hovering over the brass handle of the exit door. "Going somewhere, Loretta?" I asked. My voice was low. It didn't boom like it had on the microphone. It was intimate. It was the voice of a husband speaking to his wife. She turned slowly. Her face was pale, stripped of the charm she wore like makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I need to go home, Ike," she whispered. "I need to lie down. This has been too much." She tried to brush past me. She tried to play the role of the exhausted victim one last time. I stepped in front of her. I blocked the door. "You don't have a home, Loretta," I said. She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Of course I have a home. Our home." I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket. I didn't pull out a gun. I pulled out a thick legal envelope. It was heavy. It felt heavier than the Colt Python. I held it up. "This is the deed to the house," I said. "I transferred it to the trust 3 days ago. And as of this morning, the trust evicted all occupants. The locks have been changed. Your key won't work." Loretta stared at the envelope. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And this," I said, pulling out a second document, "is a restraining order. It says you cannot come within 500 feet of the property. If you step onto the driveway, the alarm calls the police." "Ike, please," she stammered, reaching for my arm. "You can't do this. I'm your wife. We've been married for 40 years. You're angry about Bradley. I get it. He was foolish. He got mixed up with bad people. But don't punish me for his mistakes." I looked at her hand, reaching for me. The same hand that had poured the powder into my tea. The same hand that had smoothed my brow while checking if I was dying fast enough. I took a step back. I didn't let her touch me. "His mistakes?" I asked. I walked over to a nearby cocktail table. It was draped in white linen. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside were the jagged, coffee-stained shards of a ceramic mug. I dropped the bag on the table. It made a clattering sound that seemed deafening in the empty room. Loretta looked at the bag. She recognized it instantly. It was the cup I had dropped in the kitchen, the cup she had been so desperate to clean up. And I pulled out one more thing. The report from Dr. Miller. "This isn't Bradley's mistake, Loretta," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "This is your handwriting. This is your recipe. Digoxin, Valium, and a synthetic neurotoxin found in rat poison." Loretta flinched as if I had slapped her. "Ike, no," she whimpered. "It was herbal. It was for your nerves. Don't lie to me," I roared. The sound cracked the air. The waiters stopped moving. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to be calm. "I have the video, Loretta. I have the video of you pouring it. I have the audio of you telling Bradley to increase the dose. I have the audio of you discussing how to hide the symptoms so the autopsy would look natural." I leaned in close to her face. "You weren't trying to calm my nerves. You were trying to stop my heart. You were trying to kill me, Loretta, just like you killed Marcus." Her eyes went wide. The name hit her like a physical blow. "Marcus," she breathed. "Yes, Marcus. I know about Linda. I know you two were swapping pills. I know you traded tips on how to murder your husband so you could cash in the life insurance and retire to Miami." Loretta crumbled. She grabbed the edge of the table to support herself. The denial vanished. She knew there was no point. The wall of lies she had built had collapsed, and she was standing naked in the rubble. She started to cry. It was an ugly sound. A sound of pure terror. "Ike, please. I was scared. Bradley said we were going to lose everything. He said the cartel would come for us. He said if we didn't get the money from the warehouse, they would kill Keisha. They would kill me." "So you decided to kill me instead?" I asked. "I didn't want to," she sobbed. "I tried to make it painless. I told him I didn't want you to suffer. I just wanted you to sleep." "You wanted me dead," I corrected her. "You wanted me out of the way so you could sell my life's work to pay a drug dealer." I looked at her with disgust. "You have two choices, Loretta. And because I am a generous man, because I once loved you, I am going to let you pick. I placed 2 documents on the table. Option 1, I said, pointing to the left. I call the detective back in here. I hand him this bag of shards. I hand him the lab report. And I hand him the hard drive with the video of you poisoning me. Loretta shook her head violently. No, Ike. No. If I do that, I continued, you will be arrested tonight. You will be charged with attempted murder. 1st degree. Premeditated. And then I will petition to exhume Marcus's body. And when they find the same poison in his system, you and Linda will be charged with capital murder. I looked her in the eye. In this state, Loretta, they still have the death penalty. But even if you get lucky, you will die in a concrete cage. You will never see the sun again. You will die wearing an orange jumpsuit surrounded by strangers who don't care about your garden or your bridge club. She covered her ears. Stop it. Stop it. Option 2, I said, pointing to the document on the right. This is a divorce settlement. It is uncontested. It states that you admit to infidelity and emotional abuse. It states that you waive all rights to alimony. You waive all rights to my pension. You waive all rights to any asset held by the Turner Trust. I uncapped a pen and set it down. You sign this, and then you sign this confession. Confession, she whispered. A written confession of what you did. Admitting to the poisoning, admitting to the conspiracy with Bradley, but if I sign that you'll go to the police, she cried. I picked up the confession. I will keep this in a safe deposit box, I said, along with the video and the shards, as insurance. If you sign this, you walk out that door. Tonight. You leave Atlanta, you leave Georgia, you never contact me again. You never contact Keisha again. You disappear, Loretta. You go start a new life somewhere else with whatever cash you have in your purse. I stepped closer. But if I ever see you again, if you ever send me a letter, if you ever try to contest the will, if I ever hear your name, I will open the box, and I will send the police to your door. Loretta looked at the papers. She looked at the door. You're leaving me with nothing? She asked, her voice trembling with self-pity. I'm 68 years old, Ike. Where will I go? How will I survive? I don't know, I said honestly. And frankly, Loretta, I don't care. I pointed to the floor. You have lived in a palace for 40 years. You have never worked a day in your life since we got married. You have eaten food you didn't cook and worn clothes you didn't sew. You lived like a queen on the sweat of my brow, and your gratitude was arsenic. I looked at my watch. You have 1 minute to decide. After that, I waved the detective over. Loretta looked at the detective standing by the main entrance. He was talking to a waiter, but he was looking at us. He was waiting for a signal. She looked at the pen. Her hand was shaking so bad she could barely pick it up. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were pleading. She wanted me to crack. She wanted the old Ike, the forgiving Ike, to step in and save her. But the old Ike was dead. She had killed him. It was Bradley, she whispered, grabbing the pen. It was all his idea. He twisted my mind, Ike. He made me afraid. I loved you. I really did. I watched her sign. She signed the divorce papers. She signed the confession. Her signature was jerky and uneven, a far cry from the elegant script she used to write on my birthday cards. She put the pen down. I loved you, she repeated, sobbing. I picked up the papers. I checked the signatures. They were valid. I looked at her. You didn't love me, Loretta, I said. You loved what I provided. And as for Bradley making you do it, I leaned in for the final time. Bradley is a coward. He couldn't even kill me on a boat with a wrench. He didn't have the stomach for it. I tapped the table where the shards lay. But you looked me in the eye every single day. You handed me that cup. You watched me drink it. You smiled while you waited for my heart to stop. You did that for 180 days. I straightened up. That wasn't fear, Loretta. That wasn't coercion. That was you. That was your nature. You are a scorpion. And I am just the frog who finally woke up before he drowned. Get out. Loretta flinched. She grabbed her purse. She didn't look back. She turned and ran toward the service door. She pushed it open and vanished into the dark, humid night. I watched the door swing shut. I was alone. The ballroom was vast and empty. I looked at the papers in my hand. I was a single man. I was a safe man. I felt a tear run down my cheek. It wasn't for her. It was for the 40 years that never really existed. I wiped it away. I signaled the waiter. "Bring me the check," I said. I had a hefty bill to pay for the party, but it was worth every penny. It was the price of my freedom. And for the first time in a long time, the air in the room didn't smell like almonds and lies. It smelled like the truth. The flashing blue lights outside the Ritz-Carlton painted the lobby in a rhythmic, chaotic wash of color. It was a stark contrast to the warm, golden glow of the chandeliers inside, a visual reminder that the fantasy world Bradley Vance had built was officially colliding with the cold, hard reality of the law. I stood near the valet stand, my hands in my pockets, watching the finale of the show I had orchestrated. Bradley was no longer the arrogant man who had stood on the stage an hour ago. He was a weeping mess. The local police I had called were there, yes, but they were stepping aside for the main attraction. 2 federal agents wearing windbreakers that said FBI in bold yellow letters had taken custody of him. Dante had done his work with surgical precision. The anonymous tip he sent wasn't just a tip. It was a digital dossier containing every wire transfer, every laundered dollar, and every email Bradley had exchanged with the cartel. I watched as they marched him through the lobby. His wrists were cuffed behind his back. His expensive Italian suit jacket was torn at the shoulder, a souvenir from the angry investors. He looked around wildly, his eyes scanning the crowd of onlookers for a savior. He saw his business partners turning away in disgust. He saw the hotel staff whispering. And then he saw me. He stopped. The agents tugged at his arm, but he planted his feet, staring at me with a mix of hatred and bewilderment. "You did this?" He rasped, his voice raw from screaming. "You ruined me, Ike. I gave you grandchildren. I gave you a family. And you fed me to the wolves." I didn't step closer. I didn't need to. My voice carried across the marble floor effortlessly. "You didn't give me a family, Bradley," I said. "You gave me a bill. And tonight the payment was due." The agent on his left, a tall man with a buzz cut, leaned in. "Bradley Vance, you are under arrest for RICO violations, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you start using it." "Conspiracy to commit murder," Bradley choked out. "What? No, that was just talk." The agent looked at me and nodded once, a subtle acknowledgement of the evidence I had provided. "We have the tapes, Mr. Vance," the agent said. "We know about the boat, we know about the tea, and we know about the cartel hits you tried to finance with your father-in-law's life insurance. Move." They dragged him out through the revolving doors. I watched him being shoved into the back of a black SUV. He looked small. He looked like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes who had finally been caught breaking the rules. As the car pulled away, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was just relief. The tumor had been cut out. The body could finally start to heal. I turned to the valet. "Get my truck, please." As I waited, the lobby began to clear out. The guests were gone. The police were finishing their reports. The silence returned, but I wasn't alone. From the shadows of the coat check room, a figure emerged. She walked slowly, her heels clicking on the floor with a hesitant, stumbling rhythm. It was Keisha. My daughter looked like a shipwreck. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivers. Her hair, usually sprayed into perfection, was coming loose. She was clutching her designer clutch like a life preserver. She had watched everything. She had seen her husband destroyed. She had seen her mother flee into the night, and now she was looking at the man who had pulled the trigger. She stopped 10 feet away from me. She didn't look angry. She looked terrified. For the first time in her life, she was looking at a world where the safety net had been set on fire. "Daddy," she whispered. The word sounded foreign, broken. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. I looked for the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders, but I couldn't find her. All I saw was the woman who had sat on the porch swing and told me she couldn't leave her husband because she couldn't be poor. "They took him," she sobbed, taking a step closer. "They took Bradley. They said he is going away for 20 years. They said they are seizing everything." I nodded. "That is usually what happens when you build a life on stolen money, Keisha." "But what about me?" she wailed, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "What about my house? What about my car?" The agent told me I can't go back to the estate. He said it's a crime scene. He said the bank is taking it in the morning. She reached out, grabbing my tuxedo lapel. "I have nowhere to go, Daddy. Mom is gone. Bradley is gone. You have to take me in. I'm your daughter. You can't let me sleep on the street." I looked at her hand on my jacket. It was a manicured hand. A hand that had never scrubbed a floor, never laid a brick, never worried about a bill. I reached up and gently removed her hand. I held it for a second, feeling the pulse in her wrist. "I offered you a way out, Keisha," I said softly. 2 days ago. On the porch. I asked you to choose. I asked you if you wanted to leave with me. I told you I would protect you. I know," she cried, tears splashing onto her silk dress. "I know. And I'm sorry I was scared. Bradley scared me. I didn't mean what I said. You meant every word I said," dropping her hand. "You didn't stay because you were scared of Bradley. You stayed because you were scared of work. You stayed because you thought I was a dying old man and he was your ticket to the high life. You bet on the wrong horse, baby girl." "Ike, please." She fell to her knees right there in the lobby. "I don't have any money. My cards are declined. I don't even have enough for a hotel room. Please, Daddy, just let me come home. I'll take care of you. I'll cook. I'll clean. I promise." I looked down at her. The image was pathetic. My daughter begging for crumbs. "Home?" I asked. "The house is gone, Keisha. I sold it to the trust. It's being turned into a shelter for abused elderly people. There is no room for you there." Her jaw dropped. You gave away my childhood home. I gave away a building," I said. "A building where you watched your mother poison me and did nothing. A building where you plotted with your husband to lock me away. That wasn't a home. It was a nest of vipers." The valet pulled my old Ford truck up to the curb. The engine rumbled a sound of honest work and reliability. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a plain white envelope. I had prepared it that morning. I knew this moment would come. I knew she would come crawling back when the money ran out. I bent down and placed the envelope in her hand. "Get up, Keisha," I said. "Turners don't crawl." She stood up, clutching the envelope with trembling fingers. She ripped it open. She looked inside. It wasn't a check for $1 million. It was a stack of cash. $5,000 in 20s and 50s. What is this?" she asked, looking at me with confusion. "This isn't enough to buy a car. This isn't enough for anything." "It is enough," I said firmly. "It is enough for a deposit on a studio apartment in the city. It is enough for groceries for 3 months, and it is enough to buy a decent outfit for a job interview." "Job interview?" she gasped. "Yes," I said. "You have a college degree I paid for. Use it." I walked toward the truck. "Daddy, wait." She ran after me. "You can't be serious. $5,000. That will be gone in a month. What do I do then?" "Then you earn more," I said, opening the truck door. I turned to look at her one last time. Ideally, I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, but that would be a lie. And it would be the worst thing I could do for her. I had crippled her with kindness her whole life. I had turned her into an invalid of the soul by removing every obstacle she ever faced. "I am doing this because I love you, Keisha," I said. "I am cutting you off. I am taking away the safety net, because as long as you have me to fall back on, you will never learn how to stand." I climbed into the driver's seat. But I don't know how to be poor," she screamed, panic rising in her voice. "Nobody does until they are," I said. "It's a great teacher. It teaches you who your real friends are. It teaches you the value of $1, and it teaches you that you are stronger than you think." I started the engine. "Don't come to the warehouse, Keisha. The security guards have your picture. They won't let you in. You hate me," she screamed. "You hate your own daughter." I looked at her through the open window. She looked like an angry teenager stomping her foot. "No," I said quietly. "I mourn you. I mourn the woman you could have been if I hadn't spoiled you rotten. Now go prove me wrong. Go build something. Go survive." I shifted the truck into gear. "And Keisha," I added. She looked at me, tears streaming, clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline. "Change your last name back to Turner. Vance is going to be a dirty word in this town for a long time." I rolled up the window. I didn't look back as I pulled away from the curb. I stared straight ahead at the Atlanta skyline glowing in the night. Behind me, in the rearview mirror, I saw a small figure standing alone under the harsh lights of the hotel canopy, holding a small envelope of cash, finally facing the one thing she had avoided her entire life. Consequences. I drove into the night. I was alone. My house was gone. My wife was gone. My family was gone. But as I merged onto the highway, I felt the steering wheel under my hands. Solid, real. I was 72 years old, and for the first time in years I was free. I had cleaned the slate. It was time to start rebuilding. Not a company, not a fortune, but a life. A life that belonged to me. 3 months have passed since the night the lights went out on the Vance Empire. 3 months since the sirens wailed at the Ritz-Carlton and the handcuffs clicked shut. People ask me if I feel lonely now that the house is empty and the family portraits have been taken down. They look at me with pity, seeing an old man living in a bachelor pad apartment downtown, driving an old truck with no wife to cook his dinner and no daughter to visit on Sundays. They don't understand. They don't know the difference between being alone and being free. Loneliness is a feeling of lack. Solitude is a feeling of peace. And for the first time in 40 years, I am at peace. I sat on the edge of the dock at Lake Lanier. The sun was just starting to crest over the tree line, painting the black water in strokes of gold and fire. It was chilly, the kind of crisp morning air that wakes you up better than coffee. I took a deep breath. My lungs expanded fully. There was no tightness in my chest, no fluttering in my heart, no fog in my brain. I looked at my hands as I baited the hook. They were steady as a rock. The tremors were gone. The doctor said my liver had fully regenerated. The neurotoxin had flushed out of my system. I was 72 years old, but I felt younger than I had at 60. I had lost 20 pounds of stress and poison. I was back to my fighting weight. The fishing rod in my hand felt familiar and good. I cast the line. The lure hit the water with a soft plop, sending ripples outward. I watched them expand, thinking about the ripples of my own actions. Bradley was currently sitting in a federal detention center, denied bail because he was considered a flight risk. The district attorney was building a case that would likely put him away for 20 years. Dante told me that Bradley cries every night. He tries to call Keisha, but the number is disconnected. Keisha, my baby girl. I heard through the grapevine that she found a job as a receptionist at a dental office in Marietta. She is living in a studio apartment. She drives a 10-year-old Honda. I haven't spoken to her. I haven't sent her a dime. It keeps me up some nights wondering if she is eating well, wondering if she is safe. But then I remember the porch swing. I remember her choosing the money over me, and I roll over and go back to sleep. She is learning. The pain she is feeling now is the growing pain she should have felt at 20. It is necessary. If she survives this, she will be a Turner. If she doesn't, she was always a Vance. But the biggest ripple was the one I created in honor of the man who saved my life. I reached into my tackle box and pulled out a brochure. It was hot off the press. The cover featured a picture of a smiling black man with a hard hat, the Marcus Robinson Foundation for Elder Justice. I didn't just donate money, I built an army. I used the assets I stripped from Bradley, the liquidated cars, the jewelry, the hidden accounts Dante found to fund an organization dedicated to protecting seniors from financial and physical abuse. We hired lawyers, we hired forensic accountants, we hired private investigators. Dante is the head of the cyber division. He spends his days tracking down scammers who prey on grandmothers and tracing the hidden assets of greedy children who try to steal their parents' pensions. Every time we save a house, every time we put a predator in jail, I whisper, "This is for you, Marcus." He didn't die in vain. His warning on that USB drive didn't just save me. It is saving hundreds of others. He is still building even from the grave. My phone buzzed on the dock next to me. I frowned. Very few people had this number. It was a burner phone, untraceable. Only Dante and my lawyer knew it. I picked it up. It was a text message from an unknown number. I opened it. "Ike. It's Loretta. Please don't block me. I am in a motel off the interstate in Macon. I am sick. My chest hurts. I think it's pneumonia. I have no money for medicine. They kicked me out of the shelter. I am slowly dying in this room. Please, I don't need much. Just $50. Just enough for antibiotics and a hot meal. I am scared. I miss you. Please help me." I stared at the screen. I read the words again. I am slowly dying. I remembered the taste of the peppermint tea. I remembered the smile on her face as she handed me the cup that was slowly killing me. I remembered the 6 months of dizziness, of fear, of thinking I was losing my mind. She had watched me die by inches, day after day, and she had slept soundly beside me. I looked at the water. It was deep and dark. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hate. I didn't even feel pity. I felt nothing. Loretta was a ghost. She was a bad memory from a life I no longer lived. If I sent her money, I wasn't helping her. I was feeding the parasite. I was inviting the cancer back into my body. I didn't type a reply. I didn't ask her how she got my number. I pressed the delete button. The message vanished. Then I looked at the phone itself. It was just a piece of plastic and glass, but it was also a tether. As long as I held it, she could reach me. As long as I held it, the past could vibrate in my pocket. I stood up. I swung my arm back. I threw the phone as hard as I could. It sailed through the air end over end, catching the morning light. It splashed into the middle of the lake, far out where the water was deepest. It sank instantly. I sat back down. I picked up my fishing rod. The silence returned. But this time, it was deeper. It was cleaner. A fish tugged on the line. A strong bite. I smiled. I started to reel it in. The fight was on. The fish was alive, kicking, struggling to survive, just like me. I wasn't an old man waiting to die. I was a man with a foundation to run, a legacy to build, and a fish to catch. I took a deep breath of the pine-scented air. "You missed, Loretta," I whispered to the wind. "You missed." And then I pulled the fish out of the water. It was a beauty, a large-mouthed bass shimmering in the sun. I unhooked it. I looked at it for a second, admiring its strength. Then I lowered it back into the water and let it go. It swam away strong and fast. I packed up my gear. It was time to go to work. I had a meeting with Dante at 9. We had a new case. A woman in Decatur whose son was trying to force her to sell her farm. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not on my watch. I walked back to my truck, whistling a tune Marcus used to love. The sun was fully up now. The shadows were gone. I was Ike Turner. I was 72 years old. And my life was just beginning. Moral of the story. We often spend our lives building strong houses, secure bank accounts, and tall fences to keep the bad people out. But we forget that the most dangerous termites don't come from the outside. They are born and raised within the walls we built. I learned that silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is the sound of a trap being set by those who claim to love you. True strength isn't about how much pain you can endure for your family. It's about having the courage to cut off the limb that is poisoning the rest of the body. Blood makes you related, but only loyalty makes you family. Don't let your legacy be feasted upon by wolves dressed in your children's clothes. Watch the hands that feed you, especially when you get old. If this story gave you chills, or if you learned something valuable today, please destroy that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me share these warnings with more people who need to hear them. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Stay safe, stay alert, and I will see you in the next video.